Kieran fell for the nightclub bartender and insisted on dumping me. His genius being Key, who was dedicated to scientific research. In my previous life, I loved him. To secure his inheritance, I urged him to sever ties with the bartender. But instead, they put on a heartbreaking drama, with her fleeing and him chasing her 99 times. In the end, the child they lost along the way was blamed on me, leaving the bartender infertile for life. 5 years later, when Kieran took control of the Chase family, he prepared to marry the bartender, throwing $10 billion at the wedding, and with a 100-carat diamond. He crushed my skull, saying, "Lainey doesn't want to see you. One life for another, you deserve nothing but to go down and serve our child." When I opened my eyes again, it was the day he publicly called off the wedding. Kieran, will never marry a boring woman who spends all her time in the lab. The glare of the crystal chandelier was blinding as Kieran's voice, amplified through the microphone, echoed across the banquet hall. He stood on stage, pointing at me with open disdain and contempt curling his lips. "I love Lainey. She's pure, kind, just like a delicate flower that needs care and protection. Not you, Ansley, cold and distant, a so-called genius who only deals with data and test tubes." Behind him stood Lainey, dressed in a white gown, her eyes red and swollen, clinging pitifully to his sleeve, the same woman who sold drinks at the Mesmerized nightclub, the one who had captured his heart. The room erupted. "Ansley? The genius from the Ansley family? She's worse than a bartender? I heard she worked herself to the bone for Kieran's new energy project, nearly going blind, and in the end, she's just average looking, always scowling. Lainey knows how to charm him. Men like women who are easy to talk to. The Ansley family's reputation is ruined." Countless gazes, filled with sympathy, scorn, and schadenfreude, pierced through me. I stood there, holding the champagne I had planned to use to celebrate the success of our project. My fingers felt icy. This scene was all too familiar. In my previous life, it was here, under the same stairs, that I begged him not to break off the engagement. For his inheritance. For the sake of our family's faces. I implored him to leave Lainey. What did I get in return? More humiliation. They played out the same farce. Her fleeing and him chasing. 99 times. The child we lost was blamed on me, causing Lainey to be unable to have children for life. 5 years later, he led the Chase family. And on the eve of his wedding to Lainey, that 100-carat dime and crushed my skull. "Lainey doesn't want to see you. One life for another, you deserve nothing but to go down and serve our child." The pain on my temple returned. That cold, hard sensation. The despair of life slipping away. Forever engraved in my memory. I inhaled deeply. And under Kieran's triumphant gaze, which expected me to crumble and beg, I lifted my head. There was no pain or disarray on my face as he had imagined. Only a cold, unshakable calm. "Are you done?" I spoke softly. But my words stilled the whole room. Kieran froze, his brow furrowing. "Ansley, what are you pretending to be so calm for? I know you love me to death. But you can't force love." I cut him off, pulling my phone from my bag. I dialed a number in front of him and hit speaker. Beep, beep. After a few seconds of waiting, a calm, authoritative voice rang out through the speaker, filling the silent hall. "Ansley? Is there good news about the project?" It was Thorn. Thorn. Everyone held their breath. I watched Kieran's face turn from uncertainty to suspicion as I slowly smiled, my voice clear and deliberate. "Mr. Chase. The project was a success. But now there's something more important. Your son, Kieran, has publicly announced that he will marry a nightclub bartender and has unilaterally torn up our engagement, claiming he would rather have her than me, the daughter of the Ansley family and the future lady of the Chase family." There was a 2-second pause on the other end. Then Thorn's voice lowered, as if the pressure could be felt through the phone. "Where is he? Have him take the call." Kieran's face drained of color, and he instinctively tried to rush over to grab my phone. I sidestepped him, scanning the guests below as their expressions shifted from mockery to shock, then to suspicion. Then, let out a lull sigh. I dropped the bombshell. No need. Mr. Chase. Since Kieran insists on using a bartender to humiliate me. To humiliate the Ansley family. I request a change of marriage partner. I paused. Feeling my heart beat strongly in my chest. A sense of satisfaction coursing through me. This was my first retaliation since being reborn. I accept the marriage. But the partner should be your eldest son. Chase. The heir to the Chase family. I said with firm conviction. My voice laced with undeniable force. Should be someone else. Boom. The entire banquet hall erupted. What? Ansley is going to marry that comatose Chase? Insane. She must have gone mad from the shock. Chase has been bedridden for 3 years. He may never wake up. She's choosing to be a widow. Is it out of spite? Is it worth it? Will the Ansley family agree? Kieran burst into maniacal laughter. Pointing at me. Ansley. Are you crazy? Marry my brother? That vegetable? You'd rather marry a corpse than admit you lost to Lainey? You're a pathetic loser. Lainey. At the perfect moment. Snuggled into Kieran's arms. Looking at me with a tearful gaze. Her voice trembling. Ansley, having fulfilled my sigh. How could you do this? Chase is already pitiful enough. How can you use him? I watched this pair of scum. Their hypocritical faces overlapping with the scenes from my previous life, and a wave of nausea almost made me gag. On the other end, Thorne spoke again. His tone carrying a trace of caution and growl. Some sort of softened resolution after careful deliberation. Ansley. Are you sure? You know Chase's condition. I'm sure. I didn't hesitate. My voice unwavering. Compared to an heir who's obsessed with a bartender. Who mixes personal and public matters and might drag the Chase family into unpredictable risks. A stable marriage that has the full support of the Ansley family is the better choice for the Chase family. Isn't it? Mr. Chase? I had hit the mark. Thorne was a businessman. One who valued family reputation and profit above all else. Kieran's actions today had crossed his line. Sure enough. Thorne went silent. This silence was as good as an acceptance. Kieran's laughter abruptly stopped. In disbelief. He screamed at my phone. Dad. You can't listen to her nonsense. She's doing this just to get back at me. Shut up. Thorne's roar came through the phone. Kieran. Get back here immediately. And bring that woman along with you. The phone was abruptly hung up. The busy tone rang out. But it felt like a loud slap, striking Kieran and Lainey across the face. Kieran's face turned ashen. His gaze dark and malevolent. As if he wanted to swallow me whole. Lainey, on the other hand, looked terrified. Clutching Kieran's arm tightly and sobbing softly. I didn't spare them another glance and walked straight towards the door of the banquet hall. The crowd parted automatically in my path. The looks that followed me had shifted. What began as pity and contempt had turned into shock, curiosity, even a touch of awe. My God. Is Ansley serious? That's a brutal move. She's cutting him off at the root. Kieran's in big trouble now. The Chase family values face above all. Maybe. The Chase family is really going to change hands? At the door, I stopped. Not looking back. My voice was soft, but clear enough for the silent crowd behind me to hear. Kieran, don't forget to inform your pure and kind parasitic flower. Get ready. And call me sister-in-law. Silence gripped the room. Kieran snapped out of it. Shouting at me in a low growl. Ansley, Hesley? Are you crazy? Marrying my brother? He's been a vegetable for 3 years. Are you going to live in Woodwood just to get back at me? Lainey tugged at his sleeve. Eyes brimming with tears. Kieran? Don't say that. Ansley might just be acting on impulse. I couldn't be bothered to watch their little act and turned to leave. Stop. Kieran tried to block me. I turned around, coldly meeting his eyes. Kieran, if you touch me again, I can't guarantee you'll still be allowed into the Chase family building tomorrow. His hand froze in my jaw. I had the evidence of his previous project violations in my possession last time I had hesitated to use it, but I wouldn't be so lenient this time. The guests around us were exchanging glances. Their expressions shifting from amusement to calculation. Is Ansley serious? Does she have something on Kieran? Seems like Kieran's met his match. I ignored their whispers and walked out without a second glance. The next day, Thorne personally called me. Ansley, I've thought about what you said. The Chase family has indeed wronged you. But if you're firm about this, we welcome you. I knew exactly what he was after. The Ansley family behind me, as well as the research project in my hands, were far too important to the Chase family. Swapping a comatose son for a strong ally and securing stable inheritance rights, he was making a profitable deal. I don't feel wronged, Father Chase, I replied. But I have two conditions. First, after I marry Chase, I will be in charge of all his shares and assets. Second, Kieran must be removed from the company's core and sent to the overseas branch. No return unless called. There was a brief silence on the other end of the line. Agreed. He hung up, and I smiled. Thorne was ruthless. His younger son was expendable in exchange for profit. The news spread like wildfire. Kieran stormed over to my house, his eyes bloodshot. Ansley, you're cruel. Trying to exile me? Dream on. I sat calmly on the sofa, flipping through Chase's medical reports. I'm not exiling you. I'm giving you the chance to fly off with your true love. What's wrong? Don't want to? Or is it that you can't bear to give up the riches of the Chase family? He was choked, his face shifting between blue and pale. Lainey followed him, standing behind him, speaking in a soft, weak tone. Ansley, please, having fulfilled my obsession, spare Kieran. It's all my fault. I lifted my gaze, my stare as sharp as a blade. Of course it's your fault. Who else's could it be? Her face turned white, on the verge of tears. And, I added, from now on, please call me Ansley, or Lady Chase. Kieran rumbled with rage, pointing at me. You think marrying my brother will bring me down? I'm telling you, as long as I'm in the Chase family, you won't get away with it. Is that so? I chuckled lightly. Then you better take a good look at the Chase family building while you can. By next Monday, you'll be reporting to the Africa branch. What? Kieran completely lost control. Impossible. My father wouldn't too. The transfer order has been issued. I interrupted him. Signed by Thorne himself. Do you want me to fax you a copy? He froze in place, as if all strength had drained from him. Lainey panicked, grabbing his arm. Kieran. Africa? I won't go. It's so chaotic there. I'm scared. I looked at the pair of them, clinging together like tragic lovers, and couldn't help but feel contempt. Don't want to go? I raised an eyebrow. That's fine. You can renounce all your inheritance rights with the Chase family, sever ties with them, and go carry bricks at a construction site with your true love. I'll have your transfer order cancelled right away. Kieran glared at me, his lips quivering, but not a word escaped. Of course, he couldn't say anything. How could he possibly give up the wealth and status of the Chase family? Looks like your love needs money to survive, I said, standing up to show them the door. Take care. And remember, Africa has plenty of mosquitoes. Don't forget the insect repellent. Kieran was dragged away by Lainey, both of them in tears. Not long after they left, I received a call from the Chase family's housekeeper. Ansley, the young master. The young master just moved his fingers. I gripped the phone, my heart skipping a beat. Chase, are you waking up? It's 2 whole months earlier than last time. It seems that my rebirth really has changed some things. A week later, my wedding to you was held quietly. Kieran was still shoved onto a plane to Africa, with Lainey crying all the way. At the wedding, only Thorne and a few family elders were present. I stood by Chase's unconscious bedside, wearing my wedding gown, completing the ceremony. No one had high hopes for this marriage. They were all waiting to see how long the lucky bride could last. 3 days after the wedding, I moved into Chase's villa and took full control of his affairs. His personal lawyer and medical team were initially wary of me, but with my precise business acumen and a level of knowledge about Chase's condition that far surpassed the norm, I quickly subdued them. I reviewed the last project Chase handled before he fell into a coma, and acquisition with great potential, but currently stuck in a deadlock. In my previous life, Kieran had used the follow-up plan he had stolen from me to take this tough nut to crack, earning the board's favor. Now, he had no part in it. I gathered the project team, staying up several nights straight to revise the plan, and personally met with the key players. Resistance was tough. Many played along while waiting for me to fail. Lady Chase, the person in charge over there, is difficult. He's stuck on one point and won't budge. I heard the second young master has been in contact with them remotely from Africa, trying to snatch the deal. I set down my coffee cup, my gaze cool and sharp. Tell them I'll be there in person tomorrow at 3 in the afternoon. And send phone an anonymous copy of the evidence, Kieran's private dealings with the other side, and the illegal benefits he promised them. The assistant froze for a moment, then hurried off to obey. The next day, I arrived at the negotiation room right on time. The other party's representative sat back in his chair, full of arrogance. His tone deliberately difficult. Miss Ansley, it's not that I don't respect you, but frankly, the Chase family's offer lacks sincerity. Without replying, I turned on the projector and brought up a document. Mr. Zhang, that piece of land you've been holding onto in the east of the city, it hasn't been approved for development yet, has it? His face shifted slightly. What if I told you that next month, a new subway route will be announced and it happens to pass right next to your property? I smiled faintly, then pulled up another set of data. Also, it seems there's a small problem in your company's last quarterly report. Would you like me to put in a good word for you with the Securities Commission? A sheen of sweat appeared on his forehead, his earlier swagger crumbling. Miss Ansley, what exactly do you mean? I mean, I replied, my tone calm but my eyes sharp as glass. Either you sign this contract under my terms, and we all prosper, or I make sure your land never sees the light of development again. And your company will have a few troubles of its own. Half an hour later, the contract was signed. As I walked out of the conference room with the signed agreement in hand, Thorne's furious voice came through the phone. That bastard Kieran. How dare he pull a stunt like this behind my back? Ansley, thank heavens for you. Just doing my part. Dad, I said evenly. When I hung up, I knew one thing for certain: Kieran's days in Africa were about to get even harder. Once news of the project's success spread, opinions within the Chase family began to shift. Didn't think the young madam actually had real skill. She's miles better than that nightclub girl the second young master ran after. I ignored the chatter. My days revolved around to things handling business and sitting by Chase's bedside. I would read financial reports aloud, discuss market trends, or simply sit quietly. The doctor said talking to a patient could help them recover. I didn't know if he could hear me, but I needed to speak to tell him my plans, my hatred, the pathetic story of my past life. Chase, you better wake up soon, I murmured, studying his sleeping face. It's no fun watching your brother fall apart alone. His fingers twitched again. 2 months later, I had nearly complete control over Chase's assets, and had secured my position in the family's board of directors. Kieran was barely surviving in Africa. Every attempt to return home was quietly suppressed by me. Lainey, unable to stand the hardship, started posting vague, pitiful messages on social media hinting that I'd driven them away. Soon, Manado Walsai. The internet buzzed with rumors of me being a usurper with a heart of stone. I had my lawyer send a cease and desist letter to her inbox, along with screenshots of her lavish spending using Kieran's secondary credit card. Lainey, one more word online, I warned. And next time, what you'll receive won't be any mail, it'll be a court summons. She went silent instantly. Just when I thought Chase would remain asleep for a while longer, a call came late one night while I was working in the study. Madame, the young master, he's opened his eyes. The nurse stammered, breathless with excitement. The pen in my hand clattered onto the desk. By the time I reached the room, the doctor was already examining him. Chase was propped against the headboard, his face pale but his eyes startlingly clear and sharp. They swept across the room, assessing every person present, before finally landing on me. He stared for a long time, so long that the air itself seemed to still. Then, what out a while soy. Frowning slightly, he spoke in a hoarse, rasping voice, rough from years of disuse. Who are you? I stood by the doorway, separated from him by a few steps, meeting those newly awake and yet already incisive eyes. The air was thick with tension. Even the doctor and nurses held their breath. Who was I? A cold smile flickered in my heart. Outwardly, I picked up a glass of water, walked to his bedside, and handed it to him with composure. Ansley, I said clearly, each word deliberate. Your wife. Legally speaking. The one currently managing all of your assets, and the person who just sent your useless brother and his beloved barmaid off to Africa together. His hand, halfway to taking the glass, froze. The scrutiny in his gaze gave way to astonishment, then deepened into something far more probing. Kieran went to Africa? His voice was raw, disbelieving. Your father signed the transfer himself. I replied evenly, as if commenting on the weather. He humiliated both the Chase and Ansley families, breaking our engagement in front of the city's entire elite for a woman who served drinks. There had to be consequences. Chase leaned back, sipping the water slowly, his eyes never leaving my face, as if he could peel back every layer and see straight through me. You did this. It wasn't a question. The main credit goes to your brother and his tragic love story, I said, my lips curving faintly. I merely gave them a little nudge. He said nothing. Only the quiet sound of him setting down the glass filled the room. After a while, he asked, how long was I asleep? 3 years and 4 months. I answered precisely. He closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them again, the warmth was gone, replaced by a calm, cutting lucidity. How's the company doing now? The East style and you were eyeing before the accident secured. The new energy project your brother handled? Its core data's with me. Currently paused. A few old foxes on the board are getting restless, but I can keep them in line for now. I delivered the summary succinctly, like a report. A flicker of surprise crossed his face. He hadn't expected me to be so well informed. He began, but the door burst open. Bourne rushed in, face alight with relief. Chase. You're awake. What did the doctor say? It should have been a touching reunion between father and son. But Chase merely inclined his head slightly. Dad. Then his gaze returned to me, his tone firm and commanding. I want to know everything that happened in these 3 years. Every detail. Thorne finally seemed to notice me. His expression wavered, complicated, and tinged with a hint of unease. Ansley's done a great deal for the family during this time, he admitted. Chase's acknowledgement was quiet but absolute. His eyes still locked on me. From now on, he said, his voice low and decisive, you'll report directly to me. It wasn't a request. It was an order. I raised an eyebrow. As expected, the eldest son of the Chase family, even after lying in a coma for 3 years, was someone to be trifled with upon waking. Agreed. I met his gaze. But before we report, there's something that needs to be dealt with first. I pulled out my tablet, brought up a surveillance video, and handed it to Chase. In the footage, Kieran was in the office of the Africa branch, yelling furiously at someone on the other end of the video call. I don't care what it takes. You must ruin that project for me. I can't let Ansley get ahead. And find a way to bring me back. Chase watched the video, his face darkening with each passing second. Thorne leaned in to take a look, his face turning red with fury. This bastard. Still unrepentant. I calmly retrieved my tablet and turned to Thorne. Father. Kieran is openly sabotaging the company's interests, attempting to disrupt normal operations domestically, according to company policy. How should this be handled? Thorne's face was ashen. Chase lifted his gaze, his eyes deep and bottomless, his voice weak but cold, each word like ice. Remove him from all positions in the overseas branch. Freeze all his credit cards and bonus accounts. Without my permission. He is not to step foot outside the branch. He looked at me, his gaze sharp as a blade. Madam. What do you think? I smiled slightly, knowing this was his first test after waking up, and a show of strength. I think. I began slowly, meeting his imposing stare. We can add one more point, send the evidence of his attempt to sabotage the project to every member of the board. A flicker of what seemed like faint approval passed through Chase's eyes. Agreed. His voice was firm. A single word that rang clear and loud. Thorne opened his mouth but ultimately said nothing. I knew then Kieran was finished. On the very first day that his elder brother woke up, he was nailed to the pillar of shame. News of this reached Africa, and Kieran immediately destroyed his office. Lainey, sobbing uncontrollably, called me from overseas. Her voice shrill with anger. Ansley, you toxic woman. Are you trying to kill us? I held the phone away, letting her scream until she was out of breath. Then coolly responded. Lainey, instead of barking here, maybe you should think about how to use your pure and kind charm to convince your man to work hard on the construction site in Africa and support you. After all, his cards are all frozen now. On the other end, Kieran's enraged shouts and the sound of things breaking echoed. I hung up the phone, feeling quite pleased. Chase's recovery was astonishingly fast. In less than half a month, he was already able to walk again. Though still pale, the aura of authority that came from years of leadership had fully returned. He began taking back control of the core business areas I had been handling in his absence. And his methods were swift and ruthless. Even more so than before his coma. The board members, who had been waiting to see how things would play out and even secretly passing messages to Kieran, immediately sensed the shift in power. They quickly tucked their tails and began reaching out to me more frequently, trying to curry favor. I relished the peace and quiet, handing most of the power back to him while keeping a firm grip on the new energy projects and Chase's personal assets. This was stipulated in our prenuptial agreement and was the foundation of my position in the family. That day, after a video conference with Chase where we finalized the last cleanup plan for Kieran's remaining influence, the office phone rang. The secretary's voice was a bit nervous. President Ansley. The front desk downstairs says. Lainey is causing a scene. Demanding to see you. She says she won't leave until she sees you, and has already attracted a lot of reporters. I raised an eyebrow. Kieran's cards were frozen. Was she finally losing her composure? Let her come up. A few minutes later, Lainey burst into my office. Looking haggard. She was no longer the fragile, pitiful sight from the banquet hall. Her eyes were swollen from crying. And she pointed at me, cursing. Ansley, isn't it enough that you've ruined Kieran like this? He's in Africa now. Sick. And can't even afford a doctor. How can you be so cruel? I leaned back in my chair, slowly twirling a pen. If he's sick, what does he want me for? He should ask his true love you. Didn't you say you loved him and were willing to do anything for him? Now's your chance to prove it. Go sell blood or even a kidney, whatever works. She trembled with rage. You. If you hadn't frozen his cards, we wouldn't have. Wouldn't have what? Not even enough money for a doctor? I cut her off, sneering. Lainey, put away your act. Kieran's base salary at the Africa branch is enough for him to live comfortably there. It's his own wastefulness. Or maybe you've spent all the money on luxury goods. You know the truth. Her face turned pale, and her eyes flickered nervously. I couldn't be bothered to continue with her. I pressed the intercom button. Security. Please escort Lainey out. From now on. Unless she has an appointment. Don't let her in the building. Ansley. How dare you? Lainey screamed, trying to lunge at me. But she was promptly held back by the security guards. Do you think I won't dare? I stood up, walked over to her, and looked down at her coldly. Also, hadn't so may have said. Let me remind you, if you dare show up at my company again or spread any false rumors online, I won't hesitate to make public the colorful lie at least you had while working at Charming. Lainey's shriek stopped abruptly. Her face drained of all color, and the fear in her eyes was now unmistakably real. The security guards dragged her out, and the office fell silent. I sat back down, rubbing my temples. My phone buzz edit was a message from Chase. Concise as ever. Is it handled? Yes. Come back to the Thorne family for dinner tonight. Father's request. I stared at the screen, my fingers pausing for a moment. Back to the Thorne family? Was Thorne trying to ease relations? Or was there something else behind this? That evening, Chase and I returned to the Thorne family's old mansion. The atmosphere was more awkward than I had expected. Thorne sat at the head of the table, his face grim. Sitting beside him, trying to play the role of the lady of the house, was Kieran's biological mother. Yvette, who had risen to power through unsavory means years ago. When she saw Chase and me enter, and especially saw him walking as if nothing had changed, his cold aura unmistakable, her smile froze, and her expression stiffened. Chase waking up, such a great thing, Yvette said dryly, her eyes full of venom. Ansley, you've come. Please sit. Chase didn't even lift an eyelash as he pulled out the chair and sat down. I followed suit, sitting with composed grace. At the dinner table, Yvette began her veiled criticism. Ansley really is capable. In the years that Chase has been unconscious, she's managed everything, both at home and outside, in perfect order. Unlike our Kieran, who's so straightforward and easily deceived. Now stranded in Africa. Who knows how much suffering he's endured. As she spoke, she dabbed at non-existent tears with a handkerchief. Thorne frowned but didn't say a word. I set my chopsticks down, looked at her, and smiled faintly. Yvette's right. Kieran is indeed easily deceived. But it seems the one who's been deceiving him wasn't anyone else, but his pure and kind, true love, Miss Laney. The one who used to sell drinks at the nightclub and had countless close relationships with customers. Yvette's face changed instantly. What nonsense are you talking about? If you don't believe me, Yvette, you can go check with. Laney used to be their top star, well known among the regulars. Maybe you can even find a few old friends to reminisce with. My tone was light, as if discussing the weather. You. Yvette was seething, her chest heaving. She turned to Thorne. Master, look at her. She's trying to drive us mother and son to our graves. Thorne's face darked, and as he slammed his wine glass onto the table. Enough. Can't even eat in peace with you two. It was then that Chase finally spoke, his voice cold and detached. Father, Kieran's actions in Africa have severely harmed the group's interests. The board is very displeased with him. If Yvette continues to pamper him like this, he won't even be able to stay in the subsidiary. Yvette fell silent instantly, her eyes wide with fear as she looked at Chase. Thorne took a deep breath, clearly agitated. I'm aware of this. Now, eat. The dinner ended in a suffocating atmosphere. As we left, Yvette glared at the back of Chase and me walking side by side, her eyes filled with venom, as if they could burn through us. Once in the car, Chase closed his eyes to rest, before speaking suddenly. Your approach to dealing with Yvette is too gentle. I turned to look at him. He opened his eyes, his gaze cold and distant. Strike at the weak spot. What she cares about most isn't Kieran. It's her position as Kieran's wife and the wealth that comes with it. I understood his meaning now. But I hadn't expected him to be so ruthless toward his stepmother. Got it. I nodded. It seemed like it was time to create some real trouble for Yvette. Chase closed his eyes again, his lips curving ever so slightly into the faintest of smiles. If you need help, just ask. A few days later, I met with a private detective and slid a stack of documents about Yvette across the table. Focus on her financial transactions over the past 3 years, especially her offshore accounts, and any private dealings with her partners. The detective understood immediately and quickly left. Chase was right, Yvette. A woman who rose through manipulation, feared losing money and status the most. With Kieran out of the picture, she would certainly scramble to secure a backdoor for herself. I knew she wouldn't be clean. Sure enough, less than a week later, the detective sent back preliminary findings. Yvette had been secretly accepting kickbacks under the guise of being Kieran's wife and had transferred substantial amounts of assets offshore via illegal channels. Even more explosive, one of her partners was a former conman. I held on to the evidence, not rushing to act. I was waiting for the right moment. One day, the Chase family held its quarterly board meeting. Chase, as the newly awake Kandare who had swiftly regained control of the situation, was presiding over the meeting. I attended as the proxy holder for Chase's votes and the person responsible for the new energy project. halfway through the meeting. When a foreign investment proposal was brought up, one of the board members who had always been close to Yvette suddenly spoke up. Chase, you've only just woken up, so you might not be fully aware of the complexity of this project. I think it would be safer for someone more experienced to take the lead. For example, perhaps we could have Yvette assist from the side. She does have some experience overseas. Chase didn't even glance at him, his fingers tapping lightly on the table. I immediately understood and cut him off. Mr. Lee, when you say experience, are you referring to the time last year when Yvette, through your nephew's company, secretly manipulated a $5 million kickback? The room went dead silent. Mr. Lee turned pale, his eyes wide with disbelief. Ansley, you're slandering me. Unfazed, I pulled out several transfer records and copies of contracts from my folder, handing them to the assistant to distribute to the board members. These are the financial transactions through which Ms. Yvette accepted kickbacks, all handled by your nephew. Mr. Lee, would you like me to submit even more detailed evidence, including the books from your nephew's company, to the supervisory board? Mr. Lee's face drained of color, sweat pouring from his forehead, and he couldn't utter a word. The other board members, holding the hard evidence in their hands, looked at me with fear and awe. Finally, having fulfilled my answer, Chase spoke, his voice calm and measured. Mr. Lee is getting old. It seems his energy has waned, making him easy to deceive. From today, you'll step down from all positions in the group and retire. With a casual flick of his hand, he dismissed an elder. His gaze swept the room. Anyone else had doubts about the project leader or my wife's capabilities? The room was dead silent. No one dared to speak. I knew that Chase was asserting his dominance through me, signaling to everyone Ansley was the one he was protecting. After the meeting, I returned to my office, and Chase followed me in. Quick move, he commented. You gave me a good reminder. I poured him a glass of water. He took the glass but didn't drink, his gaze fixed on me. When do you plan to take down Yvette? Soon, let out a low sigh. I smiled faintly. I'll wait until she's transferred more assets, enough to make the case even heavier. He nodded, clearly satisfied with my ruthlessness. Just then, let out a low sigh. My computer pinged with an urgent news notification. Chase family group's Lady Yvette suspected of large-scale embezzlement and illegal asset transfer, taken by police for investigation. The accompanying image showed Yvette being escorted by two female officers, her face ashen, her hair disheveled, far from the image of a wealthy lady. I raised an eyebrow and looked at Chase. Did you do this? He leisurely took a sip of water. Just a casual move. I understood. He found my movements too slow and directly fueled the fire, using the most official and irreversible method possible. It was ruthless, but also absolute. With this, Evan fulfilled my obsession. Yvette was finished, and Kieran lost his last hold overseas. My phone vibrated wildly. It was a call from Kieran in Africa, his voice hoarse and desperate. Ansley, it's you. You're the one who did this to my mom. You venomous witch. I won't let you go. I'll haunt you as a ghost if I have to. I hung up immediately, blocking his number. Finally, having fulfilled my obsession, the noise ceased. Chase set down his water cup and walked to the window, watching the traffic below. The eyesores are almost cleared, he said, turning, his silhouette backlit by the light, his profile sharp. Next, we need to focus on the real business. By real business, he meant completely taking control of the Chase family and dealing with those still secretly eyeing the throne. I knew that our marriage, one that began out of mutual interest and revenge, was slowly but surely evolving into an unbreakable alliance. I walked over to him, standing shoulder to shoulder. So, what's the plan? He glanced at me, a faint, almost imperceptible smile flickering in his eyes. What do you think, madam? A news of Yvette's arrest hit the Chase family like a stone dropping into an already turbulent pool. Thorne was so furious. He nearly had a heart attack and had to be admitted to the ICU. No matter how much he disliked Yvette, she had been Kieran's wife for almost 20 years. And now such a scandal had erupted. throwing the Chase family's reputation into the mud. I brought a fruit basket to visit him. And outside his hospital room, I overheard him shouting at his confidant. Investigate. Find out who leaked the news to the police. Was it Ansley, that little girl? His confidant hesitated, clearly uncomfortable. I pushed open the door, a well-placed look of concern on my face. Dad. How are you feeling? Thorne glared at me, his face pale with suppressed anger. Ansley's here, he muttered, dismissing his confidant. The room was now just the two of us. I was also surprised by Yvette's actions. I said, setting the fruit basket down, my tone calm. But the evidence of her embezzling company funds and illegally transferring assets is clear. This is a huge blow to the company's reputation. The immediate priority is to sever ties quickly and stabilize the stock price. Thorne fixed his piercing gaze on me, trying to find a flaw in my expression. Don't you have anything else to say? I met his gaze without hesitation. I do. I think we should issue an official statement immediately to disassociate the company from Yvette's personal actions. Either you or Chase should personally apologize and compensate the affected partners to minimize the damage. Every point I made was reasonable and entirely focused on the company's interests, leaving him with no room to argue. Thorne fell silent for a moment, then warily waved his hand. Do as you see fit. Let Chase handle it. All right. Dad. Get some rest. I turned and left. As I closed the door, a cold, subtle smile curled at the corners of my lips. Sever ties. Apologize? This was just the beginning. Chase moved faster than I expected. He swiftly released the statement, personally met with the heads of key partners, and used both force and diplomacy to stabilize the situation. Within no time, the board members who had previously been hesitant or secretly siding with Kieran were completely silenced by his show of power. After a brief period of turbulence, the Chase family ship was now firmly back on course under Chase's command. As for Kieran, after Yvette's fall, he completely disappeared from the radar. Rumor had it that he couldn't even stay at the Africa branch anymore. He was drowning in debt. Disappeared with Lainey. Like they had evaporated from the world. I didn't bother looking for them. A stray dog wasn't worth the effort. They would eventually make a spectacle of themselves. That day, I represented the Chase family at a tech summit. After signing a memorandum of understanding, I was leaving the conference room when I was stopped by a familiar, disheveled figure at the hallway corner. It was Lainey. She was gaunt and in a cheap, wrinkled dress. Her face was flushed unnaturally. Her eyes wild and frantic, locked onto me with obsessive intensity. Ansley. Her voice was hoarse, filled with a desperate, reckless madness. Give me money. 5 million. Or I'll expose everything. The collusion between you and Chase to harm Yvette. And for Kieran out. I have evidence. I stopped and looked at her, her desperation only making me laugh. Evidence? I raised an eyebrow. You mean the forged chat logs and bank transfer screenshots your little scam artist boyfriend gave you? Lainey's pupils contracted sharply, and the color drained from her face. You? How do you know? I know more than just that. I took a step closer, lowering my voice so only the two of us could hear. I also know about the troubles your client, Mr. Wang, from Charming, recently faced. He's caught up in a lawsuit and is looking for someone to take the fall. Tell me, if I send you over and tell him you're willing to take the blame for everything, do you think he'll be grateful to me? Lainey's body began to shake violently, her eyes shifting from madness to raw terror. No. You can't. I can. I straightened up, brushing off non-existent dust from my clothes. Lainey. Get lost. If I ever see you again, don't expect just a few words. Next time, it'll be free meals in prison for you. She crumpled to the floor, completely defeated, her spirit broken. I didn't look at her again as I walked away. This kind of past wasn't even worth lifting a finger for. Back at the office, Chase was waiting for me. He was sitting in my chair, flipping through the latest report on the new energy project. Trouble? He asked without looking up. Just a fly. I swatted it away, I replied, walking over to grab another document. He closed the report and finally looked at me. his gaze dark. There's news on Kieran. I froze. Where? Macau. He owes a huge sum to the casinos and has been detained. Chase's tone was indifferent, as if it were a trivial matter. The casino contacted the Chase family, asking for money to ransom him. I scoffed. What does Dad think? My father's opinion, Chase said, rising and walking over to me, looking down with a heavy gaze, is that the Chase family doesn't support useless people, and certainly doesn't clean up after a gambler. I understood. Thorne had completely given up on Kieran. So? I met his gaze. So, Chase's lips curled into a cruel smile. Madam, please take a trip to Macau and clean it up. The words clean it up were bitten off sharply. I looked into his eyes, which were filled with unmistakable coldness and resolve. I understood. He wanted me to deliver the final blow to Kieran, once and for all, severing any lingering ties and eliminating potential threats to the Chase family. Okay, I said without hesitation. I'll go. That afternoon, I flew to Macau with my lawyer and bodyguard. The casino staff led us to a dimly lit private room. Kieran was tied to a chair, his face bruised and swollen, his body reeking of a foul stench. He no longer resembled the arrogant sec and son of the Chase family. He saw me and froze for a moment before his eyes lit up, as if seeing a lifeline. He struggled and screamed. Ansley! It's you! Hurry! Hurry and pay them! Take me back! I walked up to him and stopped, quietly watching him. Back? I repeated, my tone light. Back where? To the Chase family? Kieran nodded eagerly. Yes. Back to the Chase family. I'm the second son of the Chase family. They can't just abandon me. I smiled, bent down, and leaned in close, speaking in a tone only we could hear. Kieran, don't you understand yet? The Chase family doesn't want you anymore. Your mother is in prison. Your father thinks you're dead, and your brother. I paused, watching his face drain of color, then spoke, each word sinking in. He sent me to give you your final send-off. Kieran's pupils dilated, and he shook his head frantically. No. No way. You're lying. Dad wouldn't abandon me. And my brother wouldn't. 8 million in gambling debts. I stood upright and pulled out a document, throwing it in front of him. Sign it. Give up all inheritance rights to the Chase family. Clear the debts, and they'll let you go. It was a share transfer agreement and a declaration of renouncing inheritance. Kieran stared at the papers as if he had seen a venomous snake. He jerked back in horror. I won't sign. Don't even think about it. Won't sign? I raised an eyebrow and gave a subtle look to the casino manager. The manager nodded and waved a hand. Two burly men stepped forward, pinning Kieran down, grabbing his fingers and ready to press them into the ink pad. No, let go of me. Ansley. You venomous woman. How dare you Kieran struggled desperately, screaming and cursing. I watched him passively, unmoved. Finally, Hannington felt Land sigh. With a desperate scream, his thumb was forcibly pressed onto the end of the agreement. The contract was in effect. I picked up the signed document, checked it over, and confirmed everything was in order. All done. He's yours now, I told the casino manager. The Chase family has nothing to do with him anymore. The manager nodded in understanding and signaled for Kieran, now limp and vacant-eyed, to be dragged away. Awaiting him was the endless abyss of the casino's debt collection. I turned and left that rotting place, walking out into the bright, harsh lights of Macau's neon night. My phone rang. It was a text from Chase, with just one word. Done? I replied with one word. Done. From that moment on, Kieran's name was completely erased from the Chase family's family tree. Back in Hai Chang, the Chase family had undergone a complete transformation. Chase had firmly completed the power transition, and the board was no longer a source of discord. The new energy project, under my leadership, was progressing rapidly, with the first product soon to be launched, and market anticipation at an all-time high. Chase and I, this couple bound by revenge and mutual interests, had become the most feared pair in the business world. He handled external affairs. maneuvering through complex negotiations. I controlled internal affairs, overseeing the core technology and financial lifeblood. We were in sync, more like battle-hardened partners than newlyweds. There were plenty of rumors outside, claiming that we were merely putting on a facade, each using the other for personal gain. We didn't bother to explain. One day, Chase unexpectedly returned home on time, bringing with him a bottle of red wine. "Let's celebrate," he said as he took off his suit jacket and loosened his tie. "The obstacles are cleared. The project is set." I raised an eyebrow and took the wine glass from him. "Celebrating our smooth cooperation?" He clinked his glass against mine, a glimmer of light flickering in his eyes. "Celebrating Kieran's wife's position being secure." I laughed lightly and downed the wine. The taste was rich, with a hint of fruit. "Lainey has news," he said suddenly. I swirled my wine, unconcerned. "She's still alive?" "In a small country in Southeast Asia. She contracted a disease. She's out of money and won't last much longer," Chase said flatly. "She sent word, wanting to see you one last time. She says she has a secret about your parents to tell you." "My parents?" My hand froze around the wine glass. My parents had died in a tragic accident during an academic trip years ago, a topic that the Ansley family rarely mentioned. "How would Lainey know?" "Do you think it's a trap?" I asked. 100%. Chase replied, looking at me. "Do you want to go?" I was silent for a moment before finishing the last of my wine. Yes. Even if there was only a 1% chance. I needed to find out. Besides, I also wanted to see for myself what had become of this once glorious white lotus flower, now withered and decayed. Chase didn't stop me. "I'll arrange for someone to go with you." 3 days later, I arrived in a damp, dilapidated border town in Southeast Asia, accompanied by my bodyguards. In a small clinic that reeked of mold and disinfectant, I saw Lainey. She was lying in a filthy bed, gaunt and pale, with deep-set eyes. Her once proud blonde hair was now yellow and brittle like straw. When she saw me, the last spark of light flickered in her murky eyes as she struggled to sit up. You came." Her voice was as hoarse as a torn wind instrument. I stood by her bedside, keeping my distance, my expression emotionless. "Tell me, what is the secret about my parents?" Lainey began to cough violently, gasping for air, a strange and malicious smile spreading across her face. "Ansley, you think you've won? Do you know, your parents didn't die by accident." A chill ran through me, my nails digging into my palm. "Explain." It was. Her words were broken, her breath shallow. "It was Thorne. He feared your father's research would threaten the Chase family. So?" Her voice was interrupted again by a violent fit of coughing. She spat out a mouthful of black blood, splattering onto the filthy sheets. I stared at her, unblinking. "Where's the evidence?" Lainey's eyes began to glaze over, her face showing a twisted sense of vengeful pleasure. "Evidence? It's long gone." "Ansley, you're such a pitiful fool. Helping your enemies seize the throne." Her voice grew weaker, and eventually, heading fulfilled my obsession. Her head tilted to one side as she drew her last breath. Her eyes remained wide open, filled with endless hatred and a hint of mockery. I stood there, the stench of the clinic filling my nostrils. Lainey's dying words like poison seeping into my ears. "Thorne? Killed my parents? Could it be? Murder for business gain?" The shock sent a violent churn through my stomach. I forced myself to calm down. Lainey's words couldn't be fully trusted. She must have wanted to drag me down with her, to shake my resolve. But what if it's true? I took a deep breath, turned around, and instructed my bodyguard. "Take care of it." "En," Madado Mo sigh. Without looking back, I left that revolting place behind. On the flight home, I gazed out at the rolling sea of clouds, my mind in turmoil. If what Lainey said was true, then everything I had done since my rebirth, all the revenge I had meticulously plotted, would be nothing but a joke. Was I actually helping the Chase family, who might be my father's killers, to deal with another enemy's son? Did Chase know? What role did he play in all of this? The plane landed. And Chase was there to pick me up himself. He stood by the car in a black coat. Tall and imposing. When he saw me, he stepped forward and effortlessly took the bag from my hands. "You look off," he said with a frown. What did she say? I looked up at his cold yet now subtly concerned face. And for the first time, he seemed unfamiliar to me. I opened my mouth to ask, but then swallowed the words. It wasn't the right time. Without evidence. Making a move now would only put me at a disadvantage. "It's nothing," I said, lowering my gaze to hide the turmoil within. Just seeing her like that made me feel nauseous. Chase stared at me for a few seconds, then didn't press further. He opened the car door. "Let's go home." Sitting in the car, I watched the cityscape rush by through the window, a coldness settling in my chest. Back at the villa, I moved into the top-floor study under the pretense of needing to keep the final stage of a project highly confidential. I ate and slept there. Chase didn't say anything, just instructed the house staff to deliver meals on time. He seemed to be very busy, often coming back late at night. Between us, it felt like there was an invisible wall. I began quietly investigating. My parents were top-tier materials scientists. A national research project they had led had clashed with the core business of the Chase family during a critical phase. Shortly after, they met with an accident and fell off a cliff during an outdoor exploration. The official conclusion was equipment failure. Using the connections from the Ansley family and the permissions Chase gave me, I quietly accessed the accident report from that year, as well as confidential files from the Chase family around the same time. The report was flawless, meticulously written. But one file in the Chase family archives, a copy of a board meeting minutes marked as destroyed, caught my attention. It vaguely mentioned the need to properly handle the potential threat posed by the Ansley family project, and the document was dated exactly 1 week before my parents' accident. Properly handle. My heart sank. It wasn't enough for direct evidence, but the implication was glaringly obvious. I needed something more concrete. I remembered an old-fashioned safe my parents had left behind, which had always been kept at the Ansley family estate. As a child, I couldn't open it. And then I forgot about it. Perhaps there were clues inside? I found an excuse to return to the Ansley family home, send everyone else away. And after trying numerous combinations using the code I knew and my mother's birthday, I finally heard a click. The safe opened. Inside, besides some old photos and jewelry, was a thick leather-bound notebook. It was my father's experimental diary. With trembling hands, I flipped it open. The pages were filled with complex formulas and data. Until the last few pages. March 15, Thorne visited today. His attitude was firm, demanding that we suspend the project or share the core data. Madman. This project is vital to the country. How could it be reduced to a tool for capitalists to profit from? March 18, another inspection of the equipment found signs of sabotage. Reporting to the police yielded no results. Is it the Chase family? Have they truly gone this far? March 22, someone is following us. My mother is scared. I backed up the key data and hidden it in. The diary ended abruptly here. Hidden where? The next pages had been torn out. I collapsed to the floor. Cold all over. Though there was no direct proof, the contents of my father's diary and Laney's last words now corroborated each other. Thorne. It was him. For the sake of profit. He had really gone so far as to commit such a crime. A wave of hatred engulfed me instantly. Stronger than the betrayal of Kieran and Laney. 1,000 times over. I carefully stored the diary, wiped away any traces, and left the Ansley estate. Back at the villa, I locked myself in the study. The immense sorrow and hatred almost tore me apart. I had been reborn to seek revenge on Kieran and Laney. But never had I imagined that the true enemy had always been high above. And that I had even called him Dad. That night, Chase knocked on the door. Come out for dinner. I took a deep breath, suppressing all the emotions, and opened the door. He stood at the doorway, his brow slightly furrowed. You've been acting strange lately. Project pressure. I avoided his gaze and walked toward the dining room. The dinner table was very quiet. Suddenly, he spoke. Before you went to Macau, you asked if I knew what Lainey was going to say. I paused, holding my chopsticks, and looked up at him. His gaze was calm but probing. What exactly did she say? My heart raced. Was he testing me? Or did he truly not know? I put down my chopsticks, met his eyes, and said clearly, she said that my parents' deaths were not an accident. Chase's pupils contracted ever so slightly, though he quickly regained his composure. That brief moment of tension didn't escape my notice. He knew. He definitely knew something. Do you really believe the ramblings of someone about to die? His tone remained steady, but his fingers tight and around the water glass. Is that so? I forced a cold smile. But I've looked through the Chase family's archives and found a board meeting minutes about properly handling the potential threat from the Ansley family project. The date, perfectly timed with my parents' accident. Chase's expression finally changed. He set the water cup down, the sound of it clinking sharply in the room. The study fell into a deathly silence. We stood across the table, locked in a silent confrontation. The air felt as though it had frozen into ice. After a long pause, he slowly stood up, his tall frame exuding a heavy sense of pressure. Ansley. His voice was deep, with a warning edge. Knowing too much about certain things is not good for you. I tilted my head to meet his gaze without flinching. So, it's true? Thorne killed my parents? And you knew, perhaps even participated? The last few words were difficult to say. Chase's eyes were as deep as the ocean, swirling with emotions I couldn't decipher. He neither admitted nor denied it. The Chase family ship is now in our hands. He circled around the table and came in front of me, leaning over, his hands pressing down on the back of my chair, trapping me between him and the table. His breath was close and intense. Let the past stay in the past. What matters now is the present and the future. He was so close I could see the undercurrent in his eyes, feel the threat in his words, and an almost imperceptible plea. Let it go? I repeated the words, feeling a bitter irony. How could blood debts be forgotten? I looked into his face. Once a source of comfort on my path to vengeance. Now nothing but cold calculation and secrets. I suddenly shoved him away, standing up. Chase. Don't conflate me with you. I stared at him, each word sharp, filled with resolute coldness. Your ship, I have no interest in it. From this day on, our cooperation ends. After completely falling out with Chase, I moved out of the Chase family mansion and into a secluded apartment owned by the Ansley family. A new energy project was nearing its final stages, and it was my most important bargaining chip. I refused all outside contact, including from Chase, claiming I needed absolute silence to finalize the work. I knew he was searching for me: calls, text messages, even sending people to guard the Ansley family's old mansion and my office building. But I avoided them all. I needed time to clear my thoughts, and most importantly, to find the fatal piece of evidence. Just as I was feeling overwhelmed, an unexpected person contacted me. It was Sloane, Chase's former personal assistant and a highly capable and beautiful woman who had voluntarily resigned not long after Chase fell into a coma. I had always sensed some subtle tension between her and Chase, but never dug deeper at the time. She requested a meeting in an extremely discreet CAF. Ansley. Or, should I call you Mrs. Kieran? Sloane stirred her coffee, her smile gentle, though there was an almost imperceptible sharpness in her eyes. Get to the point. I had no interest in pleasantries. She put down her spoon, her gaze fixed on me. I know you're investigating your parents' deaths. About Thorne. And about Chase. A chill ran down my spine. But I kept my face neutral. What do you know? What I know might be more than you expect. Sloane leaned forward slightly, lowering her voice. The first thing Chase did after waking up wasn't to solidify his power. It was to secretly investigate his father. Especially the accident, 3 years ago, that led to your parents' deaths. I gripped my coffee cup tighter. He's investigating too? He's always been investigating. Sloan said with certainty. He suspects his father has blood on his hands. And it might even go back further, his biological mother's death. Chase's biological mother had died when he was 10. And soon after. That brought Kieran into the family. Could it be? A more horrifying thought crossed my mind. Why is he telling you all this? I fixed my gaze on Sloan. She lowered her eyelashes and gave a bitter smile. Because, in some ways, he and I are alike. My father was once Thorne's trusted assistant, and one of the people who knew about your parents' project. He died of a sudden heart attack a month before your parents' accident. I sucked in a breath. Chase found me. And we came to an agreement. He needs my help to collect evidence of Thorne's past crimes. And I need him to help me seek justice for my father. Sloan looked up, her eyes resolute. For the 3 years he was in a coma, I never stopped investigating. I have something. Something? Some phone recordings and transaction records that prove Thorne ordered the sabotage of your parents' exploration equipment and the fabrication of the accident scene. It may not be direct evidence, but it's enough to get the police's attention and start a new investigation. Sloan pulled out a tiny USB drive from her bag and pushed it toward me. And that's rise to power was because she poisoned Chase's mother with a slow-acting poison. The evidence is on here too. I took the cold USB drive from her, feeling the weight of it in my hand. So, Chase's proximity to me, his protection, even his tacit approval of me dealing with Yvette and Kieran, was it not just about my abilities and the Ansley family behind me, but because we shared a common enemy? Had his previous secrecy and warnings been because he didn't want to alert the enemy? Or was he testing me? Why didn't he tell me himself? I asked. He said you're too smart. And too impulsive. He needed to be sure you're a reliable ally. Not someone blinded by vengeance who could ruin the entire plan. Sloan looked at me. Now. He's leaving the decision to you. Will you trust him? Join forces to bring down Thorne? And get the irrefutable evidence to clear your parents' names? Or will you continue to go it alone? Risking failure? I fell silent. The weight of the information was too much. I needed time to digest it. If what Sloan said was true, then Chase's mind was far deeper and darker than I had imagined. How much of what he showed me was real? How much was a facade? I need to think, I said, putting the USB drive away. Of course. Sloan stood up. But Ansley, time is running out. Thorne seems to have noticed something. He's been making frequent moves lately. And, she paused, her tone meaningful. Chase doesn't adjust me as a partner. Some people may not want you to team up. With that, she gave me a long look, turned, and left. I sat there, watching the cars rush by outside the window, my mind in a whirl. Chase, Sloan, Thorne. It seemed like each of them wore a mask, and every word could be a trap. Was the USB drive real? Or was it just another bait to lure me in? I took out my phone and looked at the text from Chase that I hadn't responded to earlier. Come back. Let's talk. My finger hovered above the screen, unwilling to send a reply. Should I trust him? Take the gamble? Or should I choose to err on the side of caution and not let him escape? Hatred burned in my heart. But reason told me that Sloane's words were likely true. Chase's motives for dealing with Thorne were powerful enough. In the end, I took a deep breath and made my decision. I replied to Chase's message. 8 p.m. At the apartment. At 8 p.m. that night, Chase arrived at my apartment. Punctual as always. He was dressed simply in a black shirt. His posture straight, with a faint weariness in his face. But his eyes were still sharp, as if they could pierce through to the heart of things. Finally willing to see me? He stepped inside, closing the door behind him with a neutral tone, his expression unreadable. I hadn't turned on the main lights. Only a floor lamp beside the sofa, casting the living room in a dim yellow glow. Sloan came to see me. I went straight to the point, placing the USB drive on the coffee table. She said you've been investigating Thorne, my parents' deaths, and your mother's passing. Chase's gaze fell on the USB drive, but his expression didn't change, as if he had expected this. What else did she say? She said, you and I have a common enemy. I stared into his eyes, not missing a single flicker of emotion. She also said, "You don't have just one partner around you." Chase walked over to the sofa across from me but didn't sit. Instead, he stood towering over me, his face half-shadowed, the light casting deep contours. "Mostly true," he admitted, bluntly, which caught me off guard. "Mostly?" I seized on that word. "I am investigating Thorn. And I do need allies." He paused, his gaze darkening as he looked at me. "But Sloane. She's hiding part of the truth." "What truth?" "Her own motives." Chase's voice grew colder. "Her father did die because of that project. But he wasn't entirely innocent. He took money from Thorn and was involved in sabotaging your parents' project. Thorn later killed him to tie up loose ends." A chill ran down my spine. "Sloane knows this. She came to me, not so much to cooperate, but to use me to avenge her father. At the same time, she wants to get the evidence of her father's bribery from Thorn to clear his name." Chase sneered. "She didn't tell you that her father was the first to be bribed, the one who sabotaged your parents' equipment, did she?" My back grew cold. Sloane. She had concealed such deep machinations. "And you?" I forced myself to suppress the storm inside me, glaring at him. "How much are you hiding from me? And who is this so-called other partner of yours?" Chase remained silent for a moment, as if weighing his words. At that moment, his phone rang. An untimely interruption. He glanced at the caller ID, frowned ever so slightly, and hung up. Then, let out a low sigh. My phone rang as well, from an unfamiliar number. A sense of foreboding gripped me. I answered the call, and a young man's voice came through, deliberately low and shaky, with a hint of tears. "Is this Miss Ansley? Please, heading facility session. You have to save my mother. I'm Chase's son. My mother's name is Bryn. Thorn. Thorn is going to kill us to silence us." "Chase's son?" I snapped my head up to look at Chase. He had clearly heard the contents of the call, his face instantly darkening, his eyes flickering with a trace of something I had never seen before. "Panic? Where are you?" I steadied myself and asked into the phone. "We're at the abandoned chemical plant on the west outskirts. They're almost here. Please." The phone was abruptly cut off, leaving only the busy tone. The living room fell into a suffocating silence. I hung up and stared at Chase, speaking each word slowly. "Chase. You'd better explain yourself. Who is Bryn? And what is this son of yours?" Chase closed his eyes briefly, and when he opened them again, they were cold with a resolve I had never seen before. "Bryn was my lover in college." His voice was low, carrying a slight rasp. "After we separated, she found out she was pregnant and gave birth to the child. She kept her distance from the Chase family and raised the child alone." "Thorn didn't know about them?" I pressed. "He didn't. Not at first." Chase's eyes darkened, his voice tinged with bitterness. "But recently, he might have found out. He's afraid that the existence of this illegitimate child will hurt my value and disrupt his plans for a marriage alliance with the Ansley family. So, he wanted to kill them to silence them." I looked at him, suddenly feeling an intense irony. So that's how it is. No wonder he had been so distant before. No wonder he'd allowed my every move. No wonder Sloane had said he had more than one partner. He had been protecting me. Sure. Because we both had Thorn as a common enemy. But more than that, it was likely because he wanted to use the Ansley family's power and my position as Mrs. Kieran to control Thorn and buy time and space for the woman and child he truly cared about. And I, Ansley, the so-called scientific genius, the so-called queen of revenge, had always been nothing more than a useful pawn in his game. I might even have been a shield for him. The humiliation and betrayal nearly consumed me, suffocating me more than when I first learned the truth about my parents' deaths. I looked at him, and suddenly, I laughed a hollow, self-mocking laugh. "Chase, you really are playing a perfect game." I stood up and walked toward him, tilting my head back to look at his cold, handsome face. "You're using me to draw Thorn's fire. To protect your first love and your illegitimate child. Once you've taken Thorn down, you'll kick me aside and reunite with your old love and her child? I raised my hand and jabbed my finger into his chest. My fingertips icy. What do you take me for? Chase grabbed my wrist with great force. His eyes unreadable. Ansley. Things aren't as you think. What is it then? I wrenched my hand away from his grasp. Taking a step back, my eyes now as cold as ice. Chase. I'm telling you. Our partnership ends here. I'll take care of Thorn myself. As for you. I looked at him. Each word sharp with biting cold. And your hidden illegitimate son. You better pray you don't fall into my hands. With that, I turned, grabbed the car keys and the USB drive, and stormed out of the apartment without a second glance. The night wind was biting, slashing my face like knives. I climbed into the car, started the engine, and floored the gas. The car shot forward into the darkness like an arrow. Destination: the abandoned and chemical plant on the west outskirts. I wasn't going to rescue his first love and illegitimate child. I was going to see for myself what kind of people Chase had gone through such lengths to protect. More importantly, I was going to get evidence of Thorn's murders. West outskirts. Abandoned chemical plant. The rusted steel skeletons loomed like the bones of a giant beast. The night wind howling through broken windows, producing eerie, mournful sounds. I parked the car in a shadowy spot, slipping inside quietly. The air was thick with the acrid scent of rust and chemicals. From deep inside the factory came muffled sobs and harsh, aggressive shouts. Damn woman. You can hide, but we'll find you. Give us the little bastard. Please. Let the child go. He has nothing to do with the Chase family. A trembling, desperate woman's voice. I followed the sound and hid behind a pile of abandoned machinery, peering around to see the scene inside. A pale, plainly dressed woman, though her face still carried traces of former beauty, was tightly holding a boy about 7 or 8 years old. The boy was terrified, clutching his mother's clothes in a death grip. Across from them stood 3 men in black suits, their faces cruel, holding clubs. Thorn's men. It doesn't matter. Chase's spawn is a sin from the start. The man in front sneered. The boss said, clean up the mess. Not a soul left alive. He raised his club, and it was clear he was about to strike the woman. Now, I suddenly dashed out of the shadows, pressing the record button on my phone, and shouted loudly, stop. I've already called the police. The men were startled by my sudden appearance and froze for a moment. Seizing the opportunity, I pulled Bryn and the child, hissing, run. Bryn reacted quickly, picking up the child and following me as we rushed outside. Damn it, another woman. After her. The angry shout and the sound of footsteps chasing us came from behind. The chemical plant had a complex layout, and ran desperately through the abandoned equipment and shadows. Bullets whizzed past my ears, striking the metal framework and sparking. I pulled Bryn behind a large reaction tank, momentarily hiding us from the pursuing men. Bryn was panting heavily, and the child in her arms was quietly sobbing. She looked up at me, her eyes filled with fear and a hint of gratitude. You're Ansley? Chase. Shut up. I coldly interrupted her, uninterested in hearing her mention Chase's name. I quickly checked my phone to ensure the conversation and threats had been clearly recorded. This was the undeniable evidence of Thorn hiring a hitman. Just then, I heard the screech of brakes and the increasingly chaotic sounds of a fight, mixed with screams. Chase? That was quick. I gestured for Bryn and the child to stay hidden, then peeked outside. I saw Chase, with several men, already locked in a struggle with the 3 assassins. His moves were ruthless and lethal, not at all like a recently awakened patient. It was clear that he hadn't been idle during those 3 years. Soon, let out a low sigh. The 3 assassins were subdued and bound to the ground. Chase quickly walked toward our hiding spot, his face showing obvious anxiety. Bryn. Zane. His first glance was at the mother and child, checking that they were unharmed before turning his gaze toward me, his expression complex. Ansley. You. I stepped out from behind the tank, holding up my phone, looking at him expressionlessly. Chase. No need to put on an act. Thorne hired a hitman. And the evidence is conclusive. You protect your woman and child. And I'll avenge mine. We're square. He furrowed his brow. Things aren't as you think. Bryn and I have already. I don't care. I sharply interrupted him. Uploading the backup of the recording to the cloud. Then slipping the phone back into my pocket. Take your people and disappear. Immediately. I turned to leave this nauseating place. Ansley. Chase called out behind me. His voice stinged with suppressed anger. Is this how you want it? I stopped but didn't turn around. Chase. From the moment you decided to use me. We've been enemies. With that. I strode away. Not looking back. Back at the apartment. I immediately contacted my most trusted lawyer and key figures within the Ansley family. Submitting the recorded evidence, and a USB drive containing additional crimes committed by Thorne. Prosecute Thorne for first-degree murder. Commercial fraud. Illegal asset transfers. Pursue every charge to the fullest. The lawyer looked at the thick stack of documents. His expression grave. Ansley. These pieces of evidence are enough to lock him away for life. But it might implicate the Chase Family Corporation. And even Mr. Chase. I sneered. The fate of the Chase family has nothing to do with me. As for Chase. I paused. A brief image flashing in my mind of him protecting Bryn and the child. A sharp sting in my chest. I'll let the law handle it. The next day, Thorne was arrested in the Chase Family Corporation's top floor office by the police. And news exploded like a bomb. Shaking the entire city. Chase family chairman Thorne arrested for multiple felonies. Scandal in the elite. Chase family empire on the brink of collapse. Once a business tycoon. Now a murderer? The public reaction was immediate, with the Chase family stock price plummeting. Chaos erupting everywhere. I sat in my office, watching the image of Thorne being pushed into a police car on the news. Feeling no joy. Only a cold, numb emptiness. The revenge for my parents' deaths had finally been achieved. But why did my heart still feel so empty? The phone rang. Chase. I hung up immediately, blocking his number. A few minutes later, the office door was slammed open. And Chase stood there, filled with rage. His eyes bloodshot. Ansley. Are you satisfied now? His voice was hoarse, carrying a chilling anger. I raised my gaze, calmly looking at him. President Kieran. This is the Ansley family's territory. Please leave. He walked closer. An almost suffocating aura of pressure surrounding him. Is this what you wanted? To bring down Thorne and destroy the Chase family? This is what the Chase family deserves. I stood up, facing him. Including you. Chase using me. Deceiving me. I haven't forgotten that. He grabbed my wrist violently. The force so strong it felt as though my bones might break. I never intended to hurt you. Let go. I struggled. But couldn't break free. Thorne is down. The Chase family is finished. What's next? He moved closer. His breath hot against my face. Are you going to go after me and Zane too? Zane. The name of that illegitimate child. I looked into his eyes. Unmasked in their defense of Zane. And the last flicker of absurd affection inside me was extinguished. That depends on whether you and your family get in my way. I said coldly. Chase stared at me. His gaze so intense it felt like he was stripping away my skin and bones. After a long moment, he suddenly smiled, a cold, cruel smile. Fine. Very well. Ansley. Don't blame me for what happens next. He abruptly released my wrist and stormed out. I watched his back as he disappeared through the door, slowly collapsing back into the chair. Feeling the coldness settle over me. I knew then that there was no turning back between Chase and me. What followed would be a battle to the death. What I didn't know was that shortly after Chase left, a piece of negative news about me quietly climbed to the top of the trending charts. Shocking. The true mastermind behind the Chase family collapse is Ansley family's heiress. Power-hungry. Framing and sabotaging? The accompanying image was a blurry photo of me and Chase confronting, outside the chemical plant. Along with carefully edited and out-of-context evidence. Chase's retaliation came fast and dirty. The smear campaign against me took off, with capital forces pushing it to the trending charts. Fake accounts and uninformed netizens began to bombard me with online abuse. Some even started doxing my address and harassing my family. The Ansley family group's stock price also took a hit, beginning to fall. A few of the old board members, already displeased with my rapid rise, started stirring, pressuring both openly and subtly. I watched this familiar manipulation of public opinion with a cold, mocking smile. No wonder Chase is from the same breed as Thorne and Kieran Rooley Vile. But I was no longer the docile Ansley I once was. I immediately called an emergency meeting with the PR and legal departments of the Ansley family group. First, we will issue the strongest legal letter on behalf of the Ansley family group and myself, suing all the marketing accounts and masterminds behind the rumors. The list has already been compiled by the tech department, and will leave no one out. Second, we'll contact all cooperating media to release official details of Thorne's arrest, as well as some evidence of his years of illegal activities, tax evasion, and even organized crime. We'll muddy the waters. Third, I turned to the head of the tech department. Use the special package I had you prepare. Post it anonymously with changing IPs. In batches. At different times. The tech lead nodded, understanding my instructions. After the meeting, I sat alone in my office, staring out at the gray sky. My phone buzzed on the desk with a string of abusive text messages from unfamiliar numbers. I deleted and blocked them without a change in expression. Chase, you want to crush me with public opinion? Let's see who has the stronger hand. By the afternoon, the tide of public opinion began to shift subtly. First, several major state-owned media outlets shared the police report detailing Thorne's involvement in multiple serious crimes, solidifying his guilt. Next, rumors about the chaotic internal management, nepotism, and corrupt practices within the Chase family group began circulating online. Among these were tales of Kieran's outrageous behavior during his tenure and details of how Yvette exploited her identity as Mrs. Kieran to amass wealth. Public attention began to shift. So the Chase family's really this rotten? It's bad to the core. Seems like Ansley might have really been forced into retaliating. Did Chase jump in to smear her so he could shift the blame? But that was just the appetizer. Late at night, as most netizens prepared for bed, an encrypted forum suddenly exploded with shocking revelations, spreading at an astonishing speed across major social platforms. The first post, Chase's illegitimate son confirmed, his mother Bryn exposed. Not some innocent first love, but a manipulative woman who climbed into bed with him. It included photos of Bryn frequenting nightclubs in her younger years, flirting with various men, and private chats with paparazzi trying to leak the child's identity in exchange for a huge hush payment. The second post, did Chase team up with stepmother Yvette? Was his 3-year coma a lie? Deep dive into the power struggle within the Chase family. The post analyzed the timeline of Chase's actions after his awakening, suggesting that he and Yvette had been plotting all along, possibly even faking his coma, just to eliminate Thorne and Taryn and take over the Chase family. While lacking direct evidence, the post was compelling and full of incendiary implications. The third post, the true face of the loving husband. Chase's overseas secret accounts exposed, with massive fund transfers. It revealed offshore accounts linked to Chase and records of large financial transfers, coinciding with the time just before and after his supposed awakening, sparking further speculation. These 3 bombs detonated, causing a massive stir online. My God. So much info. Chase isn't a good guy either. Illegitimate son. Conspiracy. Asset transfers? This whole family is rotten. Looks like Ansley is the real victim here. Tricked and used by this father-son duo? No wonder she fought back. Who wouldn't go crazy under these circumstances? The tide of public opinion turned instantly. Those who had criticized me so fiercely were now offering sympathy and support with equal fervor. Chase's attempts to smear me had backfired tenfold. I stared at the rolling comments on the screen, expressionless, and closed my laptop. This was just the beginning. The next day, I made a high-profile appearance at the Ansley family group's press conference. Facing the cameras and flashing lights, I wore a sharp black suit, my makeup flawless, and my aura commanding. First, regarding the recent false claims circulating online about me and the Ansley family group. The Ansley family's legal department has fully initiated legal procedures. We will pursue this to the end and show no mercy. My voice was clear, resolute. Second, I officially announce that the Ansley family group will terminate all cooperation with the Chase family group. We have also initiated proceedings to hold them accountable for overdue payments and breach of contract. The reporters were in an uproar. Ansley, what about your marriage to Mr. Chase? I interrupted the question directly, lifting my left hand, where my ring finger was empty. My marriage to Mr. Chase was built on a carefully planned deception. I scanned the room, my gaze icy with mockery. Now that the truth is out, this farce is over. I have instructed my lawyer to file for divorce. As for Kieran and his Mr. Send illegitimate child. I paused, my tone dripping with disdain. I wish them a lifetime of misery, locked away in their twisted little world. With that, I turned my back on the media storm that erupted behind me and walked out decisively. The press conference had the desired effect. The Ansley family group's stock rebounded, my decisive and firm stance earning the market's approval. Meanwhile, the Chase family had plunged into the abyss. Their stock prices continued to plummet. Partners pulled out. Banks began pressing for loans. And internal staff were in a panic, with a rising tide of resignations. Chase was in full damage control mode, trying to stabilize the situation. But faced with an overwhelming collapse and an unrelenting stream of dirt being dug up, he was beyond help. At that moment, I received an unexpected package. Inside was a stack of photos and a paternity test report. The photos showed Kieran and Lainey, who had secretly returned to the country and were hiding in a dilapidated village. Both looked gaunt, fighting each other over money in a frenzied, desperate state. The paternity test report showed that the child Lainey had miscarried years ago had no genetic relation to Kieran. I stared at the report, suddenly recalling how, in my past life, Lainey had cried to Kieran after her miscarriage, her eyes flickering with something I had missed at the time. So, this was it. A perfect switcheroo. She never knew who the father of the child was. Or maybe she did, but tried to pin it on Kieran. In the end, it backfired, solidifying the death by my hand accusation. I laughed coldly. Then anonymously sent this gift to Yvette, who was still in prison, hoping her son could get her out. It said that after Yvette saw it, she screamed uncontrollably all night in her cell, losing her mind completely. As for Kieran and Lainey, I simply accidentally revealed the hiding places of a few of the high-interest debt collectors. Later, I heard that Kieran had been interrupted by the debt collectors and had his leg broken. He and Lainey were thrown out of the city village, reduced to street beggars, fighting over spoiled food, bleeding and bruised. They hated each other, tortured each other, struggling in the mud, unable to live, unable to die. This, without a low sigh, in fact, was more satisfying than killing them directly. After dealing with these scum, I threw myself fully into the final push for the new energy project. This was my sole achievement. Entirely mine. There was no longer any connection to the Chase family. The project was a massive success. On the day of the launch event, the Ansley family stock price soared. I stood under the spotlight, receiving the attention and praise of everyone. I knew I had firmly secured my position. I was no longer someone's daughter, fiancée, inky, or wife. I was simply Ansley. After the event, I was in the backstage lounge when Chase showed up uninvited. He had lost a lot of weight. The suit hung loosely on him, and his eyes carried a heavy fatigue and despair. Gone was the once proud and aloof heir of the Chase family. Ansley. His voice was hoarse, tinged with a trace of pleading. We need to talk. Kieran, 1 hour. I replied coldly. There's nothing to talk about between us. I sat in front of the vanity mirror, leisurely taking off my earrings, too indifferent to even glance at him. The Chase family is finished, and I accept it, he said, walking up behind me and looking into the mirror at my indifferent face. I wronged you. I used you. I hid things from you. But I've had no feelings for Bryn for a long time. And I didn't know about Zane until recently. I did all of it just to protect the child. He's innocent. Innocent? I scoffed. Finally looking at him through the mirror. Chase. Save me the act. The Chase family is rotten to the core. Thorne murders. Yvette poisons. Kieran's foolishness. And you? I stood up. Turned to face him. My gaze as cold as ice. You're selfish. Cruel, and will stop at nothing to get what you want, even using marriage as a tool. What's the difference between you and your scum of a father? You only come to me with this now because you've lost. You have nothing left. And you want to find a bit of comfort or capital to make a comeback? I took a step toward him. My tone sharp and cruel. Let me tell you. Chase. You don't deserve it. His face went pale. His lips trembling as though my merciless words had struck him to the core. I really. He tried to explain. But his voice faltered. Really what? I interrupted. My eyes filled with disgust. Really cared about me? Stop saying such revolting things. Your so-called sincerity isn't worth more than your father's money or your brother's brains. I grabbed my handbag. Ready to leave. Ansley. He yelled from behind. His voice filled with the last traces of unwillingness and despair. You really have to be this heartless? I stopped in my tracks. Slowly turning around to look at his bloodshot eyes. Only to find it all absurd. Heartless? I repeated the word. As if I had heard the greatest joke. Chase, hadn't so styled my obsession. You talk about love with me? Do you even deserve that? He took a step forward. Trying to grab my arm. His tone desperate. Nearly obsessive. Yes, hadn't fulfilled my sigh. I'd used you. Hidden things from you. But we were married in the end. Do you think any man would want you after I let you go? Ansley, Hesley. Your reputation is out there. Ruthless and cold-hearted. Which noble family would dare marry a woman like you? I looked at him. Seeing the deep-seated arrogance and prejudice of feudal patriarch in his eyes. Like staring at a disgusting pile of muck. Even in this day and age. He still thought divorce was a stain on a woman's character? That I needed a man. Needed to be wanted? The last bit of patience inside me vanished. I suddenly raised my hand. Slap. A resounding slap landed on his face. Cutting off the foolish words he was about to say. Chase's head snapped to the side. And a clear red imprint of my fingers appeared on his cheek. He held his face. Staring at me in disbelief. As though I had committed some unforgivable act. Chase, having fulfilled fashion. I shook my numb wrist. My voice colder than ice. Put away your disgusting. Feudal mindset. I, Ansley. Have never been anyone's accessory. I stepped closer. Forcing him to meet my stunned gaze. And spoke each word clearly. As if hammering them into his ears. You thought I agreed to the marriage alliance because I loved you? Or because the Ansley family needed the Chase family? I'll tell you. Neither. If it wasn't to use the Chase family's influence to take down Thorne and uncover the truth about my parents' death. Do you really think the Chase family, rotten to the core, could ever be worthy of the Ansley name? Marriage? I scoffed. My eyes full of contempt and disgust. It was never anything but a burden. A tool, never something I sought. Now that the tool has been used, the burden should be discarded. Chase stood frozen. His face shifting from red to white, then to a sickly green. As if he was seeing me for the first time. His eyes were filled with shock and a sort of disbelief. As if his whole world had collapsed. The laughable notion he held, that marriage and a woman's worth were tied together, was shattered in the face of my words. His lips trembled. But no words came out. I looked at him in that lost, shell-shocked state. With no feeling. Only complete revulsion. Chase. Don't ever appear in front of me again. Seeing you just makes me sick. Later. I heard that Chase's life wasn't going well. The Chase family went bankrupt. And he became burdened with astronomical debts. The once high and mighty heir of the Chase family had to sell off everything he could. Including the house his mother had left him. The one he had once cherished dearly. Just to fill a small portion of the financial hole. He tried to make a comeback. Searching for his former friends. But when the tree falls, the monkeys scatter. And when the wall crumbles, everyone pushes. No one was willing to associate with him. And no one dared to risk offending me or the now Dahlman and Ansley family by helping him. He had no choice but to start from the bottom, working at small companies or taking on stouter projects. But he was used to giving orders. And his inherent arrogance, combined with the noble air that set him apart from those around him, caused him to hit walls everywhere. On top of that, his reputation preceded him: marriage fraud, exploiting women, a ruthless heart, and a shameful illegitimate child. Anyone with a bit of influence steered clear of him. The once adoring debutantes and socialites who had flocked to him now greeted him like a venomous serpent. Once, at a small industry networking event, someone saw him trying to strike up a conversation with a young woman named Liu, whose family was in the building materials business. Miss Liu had once been one of Chase's fervent admirers. But this time, Miss Liu barely spared him a glance. She recoiled as if afraid of contamination, quickly taking a couple of steps back, linking arms with her male companion. Her voice, neither too loud nor too soft, was just loud enough for those around her to hear. "SK, isn't this Chase? What? Not off with your first love and child? Came all the way here? How funny. You were so suffocated by that illegitimate child and stepmother when you were younger. But you didn't learn your lesson and ended up in this mess. Serves you right." A muffled burst of derisive laughter followed. Chase's face turned ashen. His fists clenched so tightly his knuckles whitened. But he couldn't retort. In the end, he left in disgrace, amidst looks of sympathy and disdain from the crowd. It wasn't a what-I'm occurrence. Later, I heard he moved into a shabby urban village, crammed into a dilapidated building with people he would have once scorned. Every day was a struggle for survival. His hair went gray prematurely, and he looked decades older than his actual age. That illegitimate son, Zane, had fallen ill due to the poor living conditions, but couldn't afford proper treatment, leaving him with lasting health problems. Bryn, Wadaba, unable to bear the hardship, took whatever little savings Chase had left one night and ran off with another man, never to return. Left behind were Chase and his resentful, sick son, struggling in the mud. The man who had once manipulated everything and believed he controlled the situation now found himself abandoned and by everyone, with nothing to his name. He had lost even the most basic of dignity and had become the very thing he once despised. After that, news of him became scarce. Maybe he was quietly hanging on in some forgotten corner, or maybe, who cared? Occasionally, having fulfilled my obsession. When I saw reports about the Ansley family or myself in the financial news, I would momentarily recall that such a person had once existed. But that was all. He had long been left behind. A trivial, even sordid footnote in the brilliance of my life. Mentioning him now seemed a waste of breath. End of story. Liana suddenly sat up in bed, gasping for air. Her forehead covered in beads of sweat. Her eyes gleamed with an unprecedented resolve and determination. She glanced around the lavishly decorated room, the European-style carved bed, the expensive silk curtains, and the vanity laden with all sorts of luxury items, all reminders that she was in the Liana family estate. The very place she had once dreamed of entering in her past life, only to be humiliated within. But this time, she was no longer the powerless weakling. In her past life, as the true, lost daughter of the Liana family, she had returned full of hope, longing for warmth and affection from her family. Yet, what greeted her were cold stares, exclusion, and manipulation. The fake daughter, Vanessa, who had wormed her way into the family with her sweet demeanor and charming appearance, had made Liana feel like an outsider, even making her question whether she truly belonged there. The days of humiliation were etched into her heart like blades, each memory causing her deep pain. Liana clenched her fists so tightly that her nails nearly dug into her palms, a flash of grim determination in her eyes. She swore silently to herself that this time, she would rewrite her fate. She would make those who had wronged her pay dearly and live a life of grace, turning those past humiliations into distant memories. The morning sunlight filtered through the gaps in the curtains, shimmering on the floor like scattered gold. Liana rose to wash her face, staring at her reflection in the mirror, a slightly youthful face. yet one brimming with unwavering resolve. Taking a deep breath, she seemed to transform all her past indignities and frustration into the drive to move forward. She stepped out of the room, each step confident and strong. On the dining table lay a delicate breakfast. But Liana had no appetite. She had just picked up her utensils when Vanessa feigned surprise. "Oh, sister. These crab roll buns were specially prepared by the kitchen for Dad. His favorite dish. You don't mind, do you?" Liana lifted her gaze to meet Vanessa's eyes. Her voice calm but firm. "Of course not. These are Liana family's property. If I wish to have them, I'll simply ask the kitchen to make them for me later." Her tone was steady, her gaze carrying an undeniable force that left Vanessa speechless. Vanessa's father furrowed his brow slightly, giving Liana a glance that seemed to disapprove of her directness, but also sensed something different in her presence. After breakfast, Liana learned that the Liana family was hosting a grand banquet that evening, inviting many high-profile guests. Vanessa's eyes flickered with mischief, knowing this was the perfect opportunity to humiliate Liana. Quietly, having so wide sigh, she instructed the servants to intentionally ignore Liana at the banquet, not offering her a seat or allowing her to mingle with important guests, instead relegating her to a quiet corner, unnoticed. Vanessa smirked as she imagined Liana standing alone at the banquet, isolated and embarrassed. She had already planned out how to flaunt her own status and belittle Liana, enjoying the thought of reducing her to nothing in front of everyone. Chapter 2: A Glimpse of Power. At the banquet, Liana wore a simple yet elegant black evening gown, gracefully navigating through the crowd. However, when she arrived at her designated seat, she found it empty, with no one approaching to speak with her. She immediately realized this was Vanessa's scheme, but she did not show any signs of panic or dissatisfaction. Vanessa, observing Liana's calm demeanor, felt a flicker of surprise. But soon, her confidence returned, and she decided to humiliate Liana in person. She purposefully linked arms with a young gentleman, proudly displaying her upcoming marriage into a wealthy family, relishing the envious looks from the crowd. But as she noticed Liana standing in the corner, watching coldly, her unease began to grow. "Sister, you've been here so long and haven't moved around much. Let me introduce you to some of my friends," Vanessa said with a malicious smile, pulling Liana towards a group of socialites. "Ladies, this is my sister, the one who came from the countryside. She's not quite familiar with the customs of our city, so please be patient with her." Vanessa's words, masked as friendly, were full of subtle insults and mockery. The women exchanged glances, their eyes filled with disdain. One of the more elegantly dressed ladies spoke up deliberately. "Oh, so this is the true daughter of the Liana family? What a simple outfit. She must not have seen the latest works of the fashion world's hottest designer." Vicky. Laughter spread through the group, but in Liana's heart, a spark of joy flickered. This was the moment she had been waiting for. In her past life, she had been deeply fascinated by the fashion world, and she was intimately familiar with Vicky's designs. With a slight tilt of her chin, Liana's voice rang out with cool confidence. Vicky's designs are known for their elegance and attention to detail. For example, last year's autumn-winter collection, the starry dress, which used black silk as a base, inlaid with thousands of tiny diamonds to mimic the shimmering night sky, it stunned the fashion world upon release. And there's this year's spring-summer floral gown, a perfect fusion of embroidery and sheer fabric, capturing the vibrant beauty of spring flowers. Am I correct in saying so? The room fell silent, the mocking smiles frozen on their faces. The woman who had insulted her earlier now looked awkward, shocked by how well-informed Liana was about fashion. Vanessa's eyes wide and in disbelief. She had hoped to make Liana look foolish, but instead, she had been outmaneuvered. Liana surveyed the group and continued, "Fashion is not just about the outer layers. It's about a unique understanding and expression of beauty. It seems the rest of you need more appreciation." With that, she turned and left, leaving behind a group of stunned onlookers. At that moment, Vanessa's face turned ashen. She never expected Liana to respond to her mockery with such poise, much less display such knowledge of fashion. leaving her humiliated in front of everyone. She glared at Liana's retreating figure, filled with rage and frustration. Meanwhile, Liana had made her mark at the banquet. Not only did she earn the respect and admiration of those around her, but the Liana family also began to see her in a new light. Vanessa's father, watching his daughter handle the situation with such finesse, felt a surge of pride and satisfaction, as though he had witnessed Liana rise from humiliation and shine with brilliant light. At that luxurious banquet, Liana, unwilling to mingle with the insincere faces around her, quietly slipped away before the event was over. The moonlight, gentle as water, bathed her solitary figure, adding a touch of chill to the night. She walked through the bustling streets, intending to find a peaceful place to calm her mind. However, before she could, a man with an unfriendly expression blocked her path. This man was a subordinate sent by the scheming Vanessa, intent on giving her a lesson. "Miss Liana, someone wants to have a chat with you," the man said, a malicious smile curling on his lips, his tone laced with a threat. Liana's heart tightened, but she remained composed, knowing that panic would only lead to more danger. As she considered her options, several figures quickly approached, surrounding her. In that critical moment, a deep, commanding voice rang out. "Let her go." Edward appeared like a beacon of salvation in the dark night. His silhouette tall and imposing, clad in a perfectly tailored suit. His face was stern, and his gaze held an unwavering authority. The men who had once been aggressive took a step back upon seeing him, clearly intimidated by his presence. "Mr. Edward, we were just..." one of the men attempted to explain, but Edward cut him off. "No need to say more. I understand your intentions." Edward's voice was calm yet carried an undeniable weight. "Miss Liana is my friend. Anyone who dares to harm her is an enemy of Edward." Liana looked at him, a surge of unspoken emotion flooding her heart. In her past life, the only time they had met was at a charity gala where Edward, a guest, stood far above her among the elites. She had been just another unnoticed face in the crowd. At that time, Edward had seemed like an unreachable figure. Yet now, not only had he saved her, but he stood by her side as a friend. Edward had actually noticed her at the gala as well. Amidst the noise and chatter, she had stood apart, a picture of calm and grace, and something about that drew him in. That admiration had quietly taken root in his heart. "Edward, thank you," Liana said softly, her eyes shining with gratitude and a mixture of emotions. She realized that beneath his cold exterior, there was a man capable of great tenderness, and he might become an important ally on her path of rebirth. Edward nodded slightly, his gaze softening just a little. "Let's go. I'll take you home." They walked side by side out of the alley, the evening sun casting long shadows behind them, as though narrating the unexpected bond between them. Liana looked at Edward, a quiet feeling blossoming in her heart, and Edward, too, became more certain in that moment that this seemingly fragile yet resilient girl was someone he wanted to protect. "You've been too high profile lately, causing a lot of trouble. From now on, remember to take a bodyguard when you go out," Edward said, his words both a reprimand and a form of care, warming Liana's heart. She knew that his concern was genuine, far beyond a mere polite suggestion. Liana nodded lightly. She knew all too well the kind of tactics Vanessa was capable of in her past life. But this time, it was her own carelessness. They did not immediately return to the banquet. Instead, they strolled leisurely along the street, chatting casually. Edward's car followed them not far behind. Suddenly, Liana's phone rang. She took it out of her purse, and the caller was none other than Vanessa's father. Edward smiled and moved a little ahead, giving them some space. Liana nodded her thanks and answered the call. Edward stopped in front of a flower shop, his eyes drawn to the yellow roses blooming outside. On the other end of the call, Vanessa's father asked where Liana had gone and insisted she return. He nagged about her abrupt departure, and after finally hanging up, Liana turned to find Edward standing behind her, holding a bouquet of yellow roses. "These are for you," Edward said, handing her the flowers with a smile. "Thank you." Liana mechanically accepted the bouquet. It was her first time receiving flowers. In her past life, she had never had the chance to experience love. Her focus entirely consumed by finding her biological family. She felt her eyes well up slightly. "Your father must have called you to return. Let me take you back," Edward said, making a gentlemanly gesture. Not far away. His driver brought the car over. Chapter 3, Moving Forward Together. As the banquet progressed, Liana's status underwent a quiet transformation. Once regarded as the country girl, who had been reunited with her biological family, she was now officially recognized as the rightful heir of the Liana family. This change in title not only shattered the doubts surrounding her identity, but also opened up a rare opportunity working at Vanessa's family business. Looking back at her past life, Liana had endured mockery. Labeled as an unrefined country bumpkin who hadn't received much education and was unfit for high society. Vanessa, on the other hand, had been seen as the future heir to the Vanessa family conglomerate. However, this time, fate had shifted its course. Liana's entry into Vanessa's family business was anything but smooth. When she first walked through the doors of the corporation, she was met with skeptical and scrutinizing looks. Despite being the legitimate daughter of the Vanessa family, Vanessa's father had arranged for senior executives to interview her for the position. During the interview, Liana faced a series of professional and tough questions. She remained composed, drawing on her knowledge and experience from her university years to provide satisfactory answers. The interviewers were impressed, nodding in approval. "Vanessa, your performance is outstanding," said the director of the project department, one of the interviewers. "Your insights into smart city development are exactly what we need for the company's current initiatives." When the director had first been informed that Liana, the heir of the Liana family, would be attending the interview, he had expected her to be just another clueless heiress going through the motions. He was pleasantly surprised. Liana smiled modestly. "Thank you for your kind words. I will continue to work hard and contribute to the development of the company." It was announced that Liana had passed the interview successfully and had officially joined the Vanessa family business. She understood how hard-earned this opportunity was, and she was determined to prove herself this time. Meanwhile, in the chairman's office, Vanessa's father watched the entire interview process on his computer, nodding in approval. Recently, he had noticed significant changes in his biological daughter, and he couldn't help but see her in a new light. Liana was assigned to the project department to participate in the Smart City Development project. Vanessa had begged her father for a long time to allow her to work on this project, starting with some basic tasks. But Liana, upon her arrival, was immediately involved in the collaborative planning group with Edward's family. With some trepidation, Liana followed the head of the planning team and the director of the project department to the Edward family group for a meeting. Upon entering the conference room, her eyes were drawn to one of the men sitting at the table. Was he the one who had saved her that day? Edward didn't greet Liana directly, but instead calmly engaged in a discussion with the Vanessa family about project collaboration, while Liana handled the project planning presentation. When the meeting concluded, Edward turned to Liana and said, "Vanessa, I find your company's design philosophy very innovative. I truly admire it. I believe our collaboration will bring about tremendous synergy." Liana responded with a smile. "I too look forward to working with you. I'm confident our teams can overcome any challenges and make this project a success." Liana's visit to the Edward family for the collaboration negotiations felt like a gentle breeze over a lake, yet it stirred a storm inside Vanessa's heart. When her colleagues returned, gossiping with eager expressions and vividly describing the rapport and harmony between Edward and Liana during the negotiations, even using words like "well matched," Vanessa's anger ignited like dried ender, quickly flaring into an inferno. She clenched her fists, her nails digging deep into her palms. Yet she barely felt the pain. Vanessa had secretly harbored feelings for Edward for a long time, emotions that had simmered beneath the surface, and Liana's frequent appearances now seemed like a direct challenge to those feelings. She could not accept that the man she had silently admired for so long had developed such a close working relationship with Liana. Anger and jealousy tangled within her, nearly driving her to madness. But she knew well that expressing her dissatisfaction outright would only make her look more pathetic. So, she suppressed the rage building inside her and began to plan her next move. Inessa started paying closer attention to Edward's every move. Whenever he left the office, she would secretly follow him, hoping to find an opportunity to get closer to him through small interactions. However, Edward was always busy with work, and his discussions with Liana only became more frequent, leaving Vanessa frustrated and empty-handed. At last, Inessa saw an opportunity when she had to deliver some documents to the Edward family. She found Edward alone in his office, handling paperwork. Her heart raced, and she gathered her courage to take that decisive step. Approaching his desk with a forced smile, she tried to sound casual to bridge the distance between them. "Edward, it's been a while. You've been quite busy lately. Always discussing projects with Liana. I'd love to hear your thoughts as well. Perhaps I can offer some help." Edward looked up, surprised for a moment. But soon his expression returned to calm. Politely, he responded, "Vanessa, thank you for your kind offer. This project is very important, and we need to focus. Once things settle down, we can chat." Vanessa felt a pang of disappointment at his words, but left without showing it. However, she didn't give up. She understood that this attempt, though unsuccessful, had at least opened a window of hope. She decided to continue observing, seeking more opportunities. One day, she would find the right opening to draw closer to Edward. Chapter 4. As the collaboration progressed, both the Vanessa family group and the Edward family group would have a project report presentation. Liana's abilities were evident to all, and she was designated as the speaker for this report. Vanessa, scheming, prepared a series of seemingly professional yet pointed questions, intending to publicly humiliate Liana and undermine her influence within the project. Watching Liana stand at the podium to present, Vanessa smirked. "To better collaborate with the Edward family, I have some questions." With a mocking smile and a gleam of satisfaction in her eyes, she continued, "Liana, the Edward family has been a long-time partner of the Vanessa family. If your proposal isn't perfect, you might damage both our reputations. I've heard that there's a risk of exceeding the budget, and there are also several technical challenges to address. As for the market prospects, are you sure your innovative ideas will be accepted by the market?" Liana remained composed, a faint smile gracing her lips as she calmly replied, "Vanessa, your questions are indeed professional, and I'll address them one by one. First, regarding the budget, our team has done multiple rounds of detailed calculations, ensuring that every expense is within control, with enough emergency funds reserved for unexpected circumstances. As for technical implementation, there are challenges, but as you mentioned, Edward's company has one of the best technical teams in the industry, with extensive experience in multiple fields. We are confident that, with their support, we can overcome these hurdles. Regarding market prospects, while our innovative ideas are new, we have conducted thorough market research and gathered user feedback. We believe that if we can precisely target our user base and provide products that meet their needs, we will undoubtedly gain market acceptance." Listening to Liana's clear and methodical responses, Vanessa's face darkened, but she still refused to relent. "It's easy to speak of, but in practice, it's not so simple. I'll reserve my judgment for now." Liana's smile remained steady, her tone firm. "Of course, in actual implementation, there will always be unexpected challenges. But that's precisely why our team exists. We will continually adjust our strategies to ensure the smooth progress of the project. Vanessa, I believe that as long as we work together, we can create greater value for both the Vanessa and Edward families." After the report, to thank Edward for his continued support, Liana invited him to dinner. At an elegant restaurant, they savored delicious food while discussing the future. Liana expressed her gratitude. Edward, you're not only my business partner but also a benefactor in my life. Whenever I've faced difficulties and challenges, you've always stepped in and offered your full support." Edward smiled and replied, "Liana, your talent and dedication have earned my deepest respect. We are partners, helping each other along the way." I believe that, in the future, we will create even greater achievements together. In the days that followed, Liana and Edward's collaboration grew even more seamless. They worked side by side, discussing every detail of the Smart City project, from the blueprint to implementation. Every step was infused with their collective effort. As they faced a string of technical obstacles, they stood united, overcoming each challenge with wisdom and perseverance. Vanessa's malice and jealousy, however, were like the withered leaves of autumn, noisy for a time, but ultimately nothing more than a solitary, foolish spectacle of her own making. Not only had she failed to abandon her jealousy and attempts to ostracize Liana, but she intensified her efforts, seeking to destroy Liana's reputation and position through vile means. Within the company, she began to spread malicious rumors, trying to tarnish Liana's name. Worse still, one quiet night, when everyone else was asleep, Vanessa sneaked into Liana's office and tampered with the carefully prepared collaboration proposal. It was a late night, when Liana had briefly stepped away from her desk, and Vanessa took the opportunity to silently access her computer. With skill, she altered the proposal, leaving behind a smug, cold smile as she finished. "Liana, let's see how you handle this," she muttered to herself. However, Vanessa's scheme did not break Liana. At a crucial stage of the project, Liana, with her keen insight, noticed the discrepancies in the proposal. She immediately reached out to Edward, and the two of them analyzed the situation thoroughly. Calm and decisive, Liana pointed out the flaws. "Edward, I've compared it to the previous version, and I noticed several key data points have been maliciously altered. This is no accident, someone did this on purpose." Edward's expression darkened, his brows furrowing. "This is indeed a tricky situation. We must act quickly to find out who is behind this." Together, they worked swiftly to correct the proposal and bolster data security, ensuring the project could continue smoothly. They worked tightly. The plot or scheme was nothing more than a clownish act, ultimately incapable of shaking the position of the genuinely powerful. Because Vanessa's actions had severely hindered the progress of the collaboration with the Edward family, Vanessa's father became deeply concerned and immediately assigned his most trusted secretary to investigate the matter thoroughly. Roy, an employee who had grown close to Vanessa and the company, was promised a promotion in exchange for his help. Under Vanessa's direction, Roy secretly deleted the crucial security footage, thinking he could cover up the truth. However, the company's tech department had advanced data recovery technology, and the important footage was eventually restored. When the truth came to light, it sent shockwaves throughout the company. Vanessa's father, upon learning the truth, felt a mixture of emotions: disappointment, sorrow, and anger. He re-evaluated his usually obedient and sensible daughter. Vanessa's actions had not only severely violated the company's professional ethics and regulations, but had also caused immeasurable damage to the company's reputation and interests. Vanessa's father was heartbroken and knew that if he did not take severe action, such incidents might happen again. After much internal deliberation, Vanessa's father made a difficult decision. He removed Vanessa from the project entirely and reassigned her to the company's lowest-ranking logistics department, hoping to use this as a stern warning for her actions. At that moment, Vanessa's face was etched with shock and regret. She had never seen her father so angry, and she had never realized how serious the consequences of her actions could be. She lowered her head, silent tears falling, filled with endless regret and self-blame. Chapter 5. Vanessa's father, for the first time, raised his voice at the daughter he had so dearly loved since childhood. His voice trembled, his eyes filled with disappointment and sorrow. "Vanessa, you've disappointed me greatly. Do you realize that your actions had not only ruined yourself but nearly destroyed the company's future?" In that moment, Vanessa's face instantly filled with shock and disbelief. She had never seen her father this furious. The eyes that had always been filled with warmth now felt like cold ice. She realized that her actions had not only crossed the company's bottom line, and had also humiliated her father, who had always cherished her. She lowered her head, the tears welling in her eyes. But she fought to hold them back. A bitter smile tugged at her lips, driven by her endless hatred and jealousy of Liana. "Father, I'm sorry. Vanessa's voice was so faint it was almost a whisper. But there was an underlying determination she couldn't quite hide. She pretended to repent, but in her eyes, a spark of bitterness and revenge flickered. In her heart, she vowed that this failure was only temporary and that she would find a way to make Liana pay for what she had done. Vanessa's heart was a tangled mess. She regretted her rashness and short-sightedness, but also loathed Liana for taking what she believed was rightfully hers. She knew that, for now, she had to pretend to be truly remorseful to calm her father's fury and buy herself some breathing room. She played the role of the repentant daughter with all her might, but deep within, a more sinister and meticulous plan for revenge was quietly taking shape. Liana, through her intelligence and relentless effort, continued to achieve remarkable success in the family business. She quickly earned the respect and recognition of the Liana family and even won the admiration of Vanessa's father, who began to see her in a completely new light. He noticed that Liana's calm judgment and far-reaching strategies far exceeded those of her peers, and even saw a reflection of his younger self in her. One day, Vanessa's father personally called Liana into his study. The soft lighting in the room illuminated her distinguished features and her increasingly determined eyes. He gazed at her, a complex mix of pride and guilt swelling in his chest. After clearing his throat, his voice soft and with a hint of unspoken warmth, "Liana, you've handled this project brilliantly. I underestimated you before. The Liana family is truly fortunate to have a daughter like you," he said. Liana's eyes welled with tears as the humiliations and loneliness she had endured in her past life, caused by her father's lack of recognition, loomed over her like a heavy shadow. Now, hearing her father's heartfelt words, a complex mix of emotions surged within her: gratitude for the recognition, relief for finally letting go of her past pain, as though all the past humiliations had been completely released in this moment. "Father, I just want to contribute to the Liana family, not let you down, and prove myself," Liana said softly, her tone carrying a subtle strength and tenderness, her eyes sparkling with anticipation for the future. Vanessa's father, hearing this, looked at Liana with a glimmer of approval. He gently patted her shoulder and said earnestly, "Liana, I'm pleased to hear you feel this way. From today onwards, I've decided to assign you a more significant role in the company, with responsibility for the key decisions and execution of major projects. The future of the Liana family depends on capable individuals like you. I hope you will become the heir of the Liana family and lead us to an even brighter future." Liana's heart swelled with warmth at his words. She knew this was the opportunity she had always dreamed of, the greatest acknowledgement of her abilities. She nodded solemnly, her eyes shining with determination. "Father, I won't disappoint you. I will work hard to become an heir that the Liana family can be proud of." But for Vanessa, this was like a thunderclap on a clear day. Watching Liana receive such favor in front of her father, Vanessa's heart boiled with jealousy and resentment. She realized that Liana was gradually replacing her position in the Liana family, becoming the cherished child and the future heir in her father's eyes. This realization caused her hatred to grow like wild grass, consuming her reason. Vanessa grew more silent, her gaze oft and dark with brooding thoughts. She began to carefully observe Liana's every move, searching for an opportunity to strike back. She knew she couldn't just concede. She had to make Liana pay the price and reclaim everything that belonged to her. Thus, let out a low sigh. Vanessa's heart gradually darkened, and a silent undercurrent began to form, centered around the family's inheritance. Chapter 6. Vanessa's descent into darkness was like an abyss, swallowing her sanity. She began to carefully plot a deadly scheme to frame Liana. She knew that only by ruining Liana's reputation could she have a chance to win back her father's favor and the title of family heir. And so, a sinister plan slowly took shape in her mind. Using the excuse of delivering office supplies from the logistics department to various departments, Vanessa seized the opportunity when Liana was away for a business negotiation. Quietly, she slipped into Liana's office, holding in her hands a carefully forged contract document, which clearly outlined illegal dealings with a competitor, enough to ruin Liana's career. Vanessa smirked coldly as she placed the evidence on Liana's desk and then quietly left. Although Vanessa had been reassigned to the logistics department, there were still employees within the company who, like loyal sycophants, looked up to Vanessa as the daughter most favored by the chairman. They believed her current situation was only temporary and that, in the future, they could rise with her help. Vanessa took advantage of these Navi employees to spread malicious rumors within the company. Soon, let out a low sigh. Whispers began circulating. Did you hear? Liana has secretly colluded with our competitors, trying to harm the company's interests. The rumors quickly spread, and soon, let out a low sigh. Liana became the target of everyone's scorn. Faced with these sudden accusations, Liana was shocked and helpless. She knew someone was plotting behind her back, but she had no idea how to clear her name. Liana, is this true? Vanessa's father looked at her with a grave expression after hearing the news. Liana's eyes gleamed with resolve as she shook her head. Father, I didn't do it. Someone is framing me. However, there was a flicker of doubt in Vanessa's father's eyes. Determined to get to the truth, Vanessa's father decided to conduct a personal investigation. He gathered the relevant department heads and ordered a thorough search of Liana's office. After reviewing the surveillance footage and comparing the handwriting on the forged contract, every lead pointed to Vanessa. Faced with irrefutable evidence, Vanessa finally cracked, screaming in denial. Father, it wasn't me. I didn't do it. But it was too late. Vanessa's father looked at the daughter, who had once been so obedient and now had become so ruthless, and his heart filled with disappointment and sorrow. Vanessa, you have deeply disappointed me, he said, his voice trembling with anger and helplessness. You've not only betrayed the Liana family but also your own conscience. From now on, you will stay at home and reflect on your actions. You are not allowed to step outside without my permission. Yet, Vanessa did not give up. She knew that the business documents she had in her possession were key to her revenge. These documents contained crucial details about Liana's important projects and decisions, and they were enough to cause a storm in the business world. She secretly contacted Leonard, a representative of a rival company, and they met in a dimly lit corner of a secluded CAF. There, they struck a fateful deal. Leonard, I have documents that detail the projects Liana personally handled and decided upon, some of which are sensitive and could easily raise public doubts, Vanessa said in a low voice, a smug tone in her words. As long as you're willing to pay a reasonable fee, these documents are yours. They will surely ruin Liana's reputation. Leonard's eyes glinted with cunning as he stroked his cigar, then replied slowly. Vanessa, your offer is tempting, but I need to verify the authenticity of these documents. After all, defamation can come with legal consequences. Vanessa was prepared. She pulled out a carefully selected excerpt of the documents from her bag and handed them to Leonard. This is just a portion. You can take a look first. If you're satisfied, we can discuss the next steps. Leonard scanned the excerpt, and the greedy glint in his eyes grew brighter. Finally, having fulfilled, he nodded, and the deal was sealed. However, the chain reaction that followed Vanessa's actions soon spread like a violent storm, engulfing the entire Vanessa family group. The leaked business documents, like ticking time bombs, exploded one by one across other major projects of the Vanessa family, leading to doubts from partners, stalling progress, and even causing several high-profile deals to fall apart. In a flash, the stock prices of the Vanessa family plummeted, investor confidence shattered, and the market was in an uproar. Liana gazed at the man before her, a surge of indescribable emotion rising in her chest. In her past life, the only encounter they had was at a charity gala where Edward attended as a guest, and she was merely a background figure in the crowd. To her, Edward had been an unreachable presence, someone entirely beyond her grasp. But now, he had not only saved her, but he also stood by her side as a friend. Edward had actually noticed Liana at that very gala. Though she was surrounded by the bustle of the event, she seemed to exist in a world of her own, her calm and composed demeanor setting her apart. This rare quality caught his attention among the sea of socialites, and a special kind of admiration quietly took root in his heart. The investigation team worked tirelessly day and night, focusing on every small detail, trying to piece together fragments of the truth. However, as the investigation deepened, every lead seemed to point toward one person, Liana. Whether it was subtle changes in project decisions or communications with partners, everything pointed to Liana's mistakes and oversights. Inessa's father looked at the investigation report in his hands. His brow furrowed, a flicker of doubt rising in his heart. "Liana?" he asked, his voice carrying a slight tremor. "Tell me honestly, are these project issues really related to you?" His gaze lingered on the daughter he had always been proud of, and his heart was torn with conflicting emotions. Liana, surprised by the question, shook her head firmly. "Dad, I swear I had nothing to do with this. I know the company's interests come first. How could I possibly do something like this?" But once doubts took root in Vanessa's father's heart, they were difficult to remove. For the sake of the company's stability and the family's reputation, he was forced to make a painful decision to suspend Liana until the truth could be uncovered. The news of Liana's suspension hit her like a heavy blow. She couldn't accept it, and she refused to believe she was being wrongfully accused. Determined, she started using her resources and connections to investigate the matter herself. Yet, no matter how hard she tried, she seemed trapped in an endless loop. Every lead would break off at a crucial moment, as though an invisible hand was manipulating everything from the shadows. Just when Liana was feeling hopeless, the phone rang. She hesitated before answering, and Edward's familiar and gentle voice came through the line. He had evidently heard of Liana's predicament, and his tone was filled with unwavering concern. "Liana, I just heard about what happened. Don't worry. Can we meet?" After hanging up, Edward appeared before her with a warm smile, his eyes shining with determination. "As a partner I deeply admire. I will help you uncover the truth and clear your name." Chapter 7. Liana worked quietly in the shadows, her eyes sharp as a hawk, scanning every potential clue to gather the evidence that would expose Vanessa's true nature. She poured in countless hours of effort, whether it was infiltrating in the dead of night or maneuvering through old adversaries. Every piece of information she gathered was soaked with her sweat and tears, fueled by her relentless pursuit of justice and the flames of vengeance for the past. She painstakingly reviewed every document. Each word, each symbol felt like it was etched deeply into her heart. These pieces of evidence weren't just cold, lifeless papers. They were the flames burning within her soul, the accusation and counterattack against all of Vanessa's actions. Finally, Hetty fulfilled my sigh. At a family gathering of the Liana family, Liana felt the time was right. She had carefully planned to expose Vanessa's true face at this very event. The atmosphere of the gathering was warm and joyful, with family members laughing and enjoying their rare time together. But when Liana stood up, her cold, unyielding gaze swept across the room and fixed on Vanessa, everything changed. "Vanessa, did you really think your schemes could stay hidden forever?" Liana's voice was low but powerful, each word like a hammer strike on Vanessa's heart. She stared at Vanessa with unwavering resolve, a strength born from countless humiliations and hardships. Vanessa's face went ashen. She tried to hide the panic and fear in her eyes, but Liana remained unaffected. Slowly, Liana pulled a thick stack of documents from her bag and placed them one by one on the table. The weight of the papers felt like stones, crushing Vanessa with each one. "These are the pieces of evidence you've used over the years to frame and suppress me. This is the contract where your birth mother bribed human traffickers to sell me, with signatures and fingerprints clearly visible. And here are the records of your collusion with forces hostile to the Liana family, trying to steal our business secrets. Every piece of this documents your crimes." Liana's voice grew louder with every word, her eyes filled with unprecedented anger and determination. This was her full-blown condemnation and retaliation for the humiliating years of her past. The Liana family members were stunned, unable to believe the facts unfolding before them. Vanessa's father trembled with rage, pointing at Vanessa, his voice shaking as he said, You ungrateful daughter. How could you do something like this?" Vanessa collapsed to the ground, knowing that everything she had worked for was now ruined. The glory and pride of her past had turned into endless pain and regret. As she looked at Liana's triumphant smile and the anger in the eyes of everyone around her, her heart was filled with despair and regret. Liana, on the other hand, felt an overwhelming sense of relief watching the chaos unfold. The years of hatred had finally found an outlet, and she felt an unprecedented sense of freedom and release. Epilogue. That night, when Liana finally felt the weight lifted from her shoulders, the moonlight was clear, and the stars seemed to sparkle with joy, as though the heavens themselves were celebrating her release. A year later, on a sunny afternoon, Edward prepared a special confession. In his large garden, filled with blooming yellow roses at his countryside estate, when Liana was gently guided by Edward to the garden, a flash of surprise crossed her face, soon replaced by warmth. "Liana." Edward's voice was deep and sincere. "Will you allow me to be your forever partner? The partner who will always love you?" Liana chuckled softly at his words, though her eyes still shimmered with unshed tears. She had never imagined that in a world filled with schemes and betrayals, there could be someone so purely devoted to protecting her. "Edward, I." Her voice faltered, her heart a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. Edward gently took her hand, his touch tender as he interrupted her softly. "No need to respond right away. I'm willing to wait until you're fully ready. But please believe, my heart will always beat for you." Time seemed to slow as they sat in silence, their connection growing stronger with every passing second. Finally, having fulfilled Liana nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. But her smile was the most beautiful it had ever been. "I'm willing to face everything with you. Together. From this moment forward." In that instant, their hearts were bound together as if the whole world had paused in reverence. Meanwhile, Inessa found herself ruthlessly cast out by her family after Liana exposed her true nature. Without the protection of her power, she quickly experienced the harsh reality of how fleeting human connections could be. The sycophants who once surrounded her had scattered like birds, leaving her alone and abandoned. Vanessa, now destitute, wandered the streets in tattered clothes. The pride and glory she once basked in were long gone. She had attempted to regain her place in high society by any means necessary, but every effort had failed, only digging her deeper into a pit of despair. In the dead of night, she would often reflect on the things she had done to Liana, regret and self-loathing filling her heart. By chance, one day, Vanessa encountered Liana and Edward on the street. Seeing them so happy together, Vanessa felt a swirl of emotions: envy, bitterness, but most of all, she came to realize the mistakes and foolishness of her past. "Liana." Vanessa's voice was soft, tinged with a hint of pleading. I was wrong. Can you forgive me?" Liana regarded Vanessa with a complex expression. After a brief moment, she shook her head gently, her voice calm yet resolute. "Vanessa, everyone must take responsibility for their choices. I forgive you, but that doesn't mean we can go back to what we once had. I hope you find your true self and start anew." With that, Liana took Edward's arm and walked away, leaving Vanessa with a resolute and determined figure in her wake. Vanessa stood motionless, watching them disappear into the distance, her heart heavy with both sorrow and a glimmer of new hope. Perhaps all the suffering she had endured would become a cleansing experience, teaching her to cherish life and to grow.